Everybody could stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, justice for all. All right, citizen station statements and petitions. All right, hearing none. 4 corresponds to the board. We have one letter from the Council on Aging, Friends of Mendon Elders. Actually, I want to read this. It has to do with their townwide yard sale on, I believe it's Saturday, June 10th. And it says, the Friends of Mendon Elders would like to once again hold our annual townwide progressive yard sale on Saturday, June 10th for the purpose of enhancing the senior center facility and programs such as our scholarship programs. We ask for your approval to hold this event, allow residents to hold yard sales at their homes. The Friends would then charge $20 to the participating residents. In exchange, the Friends will do all the advertising and publish a yard sale director with a map listing all the yard sale events in the town that day. Directories for shoppers will be made available the morning of the event at the senior center. Once approved, we'll notify Chief Kersey of all the yard sale activities in town that day, and we will publish safety guidelines in the directory. We hope once again we have your approval for this enjoyable event planned for June 10th, 2023. Sincerely, Dorothy Garceau, President of the Friends of the Mendon Elders. And I just want to remind everybody that I think it was 2 years ago, we got rid of the requirement for people to come to town hall and apply for a permit with the town to hold a yard sale. So the only person that a family needs to do if they want to be part of this is go to the senior center and sign up so that they're in all the paperwork, so everybody who goes knows that you're actually holding a yard sale. So I think that's it. Item 5, interview and appoint Jim Stover to the Cultural Council. Is Mr. Stover on remotely?
He said he was coming.
That's not Mr. Stover.
No.
Did you want to join the Cultural Council too? I'm joking, Jack.
Hello? I just got here. No, don't appoint me to anything.
Yeah. All right, I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, Sandy Petrale from the Cultural Council, she's the chair, states that Mr. Stover is a Mendon resident, resides at 12 Forest Park Drive. His letter requesting the appointment is below. It says, to whom it may concern, I'm writing to express my interest in serving on the Mendon Cultural Council. My interest in serving on the Mendon Cultural Council is rooted in a lifetime of involvement in music, interest in history, and appreciation of a wide variety of cultural events. Having recently moved to Mendon with my wife and 2 children, ages 7 and 10, I want to support the flourishing of the arts and culture in our new community for the enjoyment of the whole community, including myself and my family. I also hope that serving on the Mendon Cultural Council would help my family and me in getting to know the community we all call home. Thank you for your consideration of my application. Sincerely, James Jim Stover.
That's true.
Great. Come take a seat.
Oh, thank you.
We were just-
I guess that.
We were just talking about you.
Yeah, I noticed. It's like, hey, that sounds really familiar.
Well, welcome to Mendon.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just read your letter, so if there's anything else you want to add.
Well, nothing in particular. I met with the board last month. It's a good bunch of folks, some interesting projects good stuff for the community, for great way for me and my family to get to know the community. So, yeah, excited to be here. Any questions?
Right. Anybody have any questions for him?
I do not.
Do I have a motion?
I move to appoint Jim Stover to the Cultural Council. What is the,
Expires June 30th, 2025.
as stated?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thanks for volunteering, Jim.
Item 6, discuss conservation agent position.
Okay, so as you know, I've emailed you a few times over the last couple of months about this position in particular. Goal the last couple of years has been trying to find an agent, right? That group so that they could go out and do the inspections. Had 4 different people come through in that time and none of them be successful, particularly in the role. We are, for various reasons, right? We're advertising again. We did get 2 more candidates. There seems to be some indication from the Conservation Commission themselves that they are really interested in having some more administrative work done during the day in addition potentially to this inspection piece, which sort of brings us to where we are, which is we've been leaning towards getting an agent for the last couple of years. They still need administrative support, right? So I have a couple of ideas about what that looks like in terms of FY24, right? But we have to get there. I did have a meeting this past week with the town of Douglas about potentially entering into a regional agreement with the agent that they have, but they wouldn't be able to really have funding secured until their STM in November. So we still have to get, and that's for agent, and that person is paid significantly higher than what we advertise at now. But there is potentially room there for that model that we talked about with other professional services, which is pay for the inspection piece that we want from a professional, right, and have administrative work done in-house. So I guess what I'm looking for at this point is direction on how you'd like to get from point A to point B, right? And if you'd like me to pursue this Douglas idea, which I think we probably want. And if we go that way, it's at half of a position, which is more than we have budgeted for before. We'd have to consider that, right? Basically convince this person potentially. And then we haven't had a lot of luck when we've advertised even for administrative pieces, you know, for 3 hours or 5 hours there. And I've already mentioned to you that we have a number of employees that have the title of administrative assistant who are full-time employees that have capacity under 40 hours in which we could meet with them and negotiate, basically say that this, you know, bargain this piece into their job and basically can keep those hours in-house for the admin piece. We could do that as soon as, you know, we chose. And so we will talk a little bit about more of that approach once we get into executive session and what that really looks like in terms of doing that and the timeline. But I just wanted to sort of get the buy-in that you're okay with approaching it from just getting admin for now and being hopeful that we get agent later, or just keeping it flexible. I know that Concom is getting frustrated because it keeps turning over and it seems like there's no solution. And I don't want them to think that we're ignoring this. We're trying every creative approach that we can. And I mean, for continuity, at least, I think we have to have a full-time employee in there managing the day-to-day for the Concom, and we can worry about the inspection piece second to that. So any specific thoughts around any of that?
Well, there are 2 things that need to happen. That definitely is a need for the admin piece, but we need to have that professional agent, I think, you know. So I think it's great if you can pursue it and make it work in the budget with Douglas. And maybe instead of having it all on one person, we just have 2 different ones using existing staff with some of their capacity to take care of those administrative tasks that Concom needs to have done.
I think the likelihood that we find an applicant willing to apply for a job of 3 or 4 hours is pretty low.
Right, and for me personally, I know that Concom in particular is concerned about day-to-day in-house during the day. So that's what gets challenging. I mean, I don't actually think that it's a ton of administrative work. It just needs to have a designated point person so that it's being taken care of, rather than being say, well, that's not for me, that's for that person, right? So it just needs to be assigned to somebody correctly.
Do you have a specific person in mind to take on the
Well,
tasks?
We can talk about that, but there are 3 positions with the title administrative assistant within that group, all of which have capacity. And so we could talk about the potential of approaching the group and seeing if anyone is willing, or we could approach it in the sense where we could choose who we think is the best possible candidate, considering the situation based upon hours of availability and sort of cross-flow work, right?
Is there a, I mean, I would say the agent is somewhat specialized, so I believe in separating that out. You know, my feeling on municipal clerks. So is there a level of expertise or specialization required on the administrative side we have to consider is my first question.
That we couldn't train them up to do.
Right, so but I just think that there's also a broader direction here we could take
Well,
organizationally.
so I think in terms of this, in a bigger picture, we've had the position staffed before as admin twice, right? The 2 candidates that were in here and just did admin. Then we tried to pivot to agent because we have a need for agent. And that has been tricky because there are no agents, right? Or we have to train a person to be an agent anyway. And so there's not that much work that we have that we can really maintain our own, which is another problem. We really need to be regionalized in some capacity. And I have spoken to CMRPC about making this one of the things that they consider, that this is a service they should be providing, right? Because it just isn't sustainable for small towns. In terms of future positioning, meaning once we start to look at reorganizing for like a future budget year, absolutely. I would think the administrative functions, just like we're doing inspectional services over there now, this belongs over there. The administrative role of it belongs with an employee that's over there, because that's where the people are coming in to do the work anyways. It provides that continuity right there. So that would be my hope. My biggest concern in any of what I'm saying is if our obligation to share a position is larger than we need. That's my only, with Douglas, right? Once we get to that point in around STM.
But can we look at bringing in additional towns? right?
Exactly, which I already had mentioned that during the meeting, which is if this is an issue about hours, maybe I reach out to another town and see if they need a person too.
So, so based on your question, from my perspective, I would think would want to, not just speaking for myself, is split the 2, specialization from admin. I'm not sure how much more detail we can really get into right now, right?
Yeah, right, because it is a directional change from hiring an agent to hiring an admin. That's different. We have been actively trying for 2 years to have an agent. So I don't want to just presume and fill it with administrative hours when you want something.
Yeah. But yeah, doing it this way stabilizes the department and meets the immediate needs, so. That makes sense.
And I assume it will help the Concom at least know that we're not ignoring we're here, that we're trying, right? It's just very difficult to solve this puzzle.
Yeah, their biggest need is admin at the moment.
Okay.
Do we need to do anything? in
No.
terms of-
No, we'll discuss it further in executives later.
When we have council, yeah.
All right, let's go on to number 7. Consider mass preservation projects, fund letter of intent and letter of support for 13 Main Street.
Sorry.
It's number 7 in your packet. And this is the record, known as the records room, right? Is there anybody here to discuss this, or anybody on the? Hi, Kathy. I didn't see you walk in.
So, we are returning the grant, the 29th grant round. We were in the 28th and could not find an engineer that we were confident was going to be able to do this project. So we have found somebody.
Oh, great.
The price tag is high, of course, but we're hoping that, we can get that foundation and the building stabilized and moving it towards adaptive use in the future for the community and the town. So we've got all our paperwork ready. We just need approval from the Board of Selectmen that you support this project, or, the grant process, and that your intent is indeed, to see this building returned or restored and stabilized, and they'll be going, it's a 50/50 contribution, 50% from the CPA and 50% will be granted through mass preservation. Let's see, what else can I?
So our signature would be to approve the grant process. And I believe CPA already approved this previously in the last attempt, right?
Yeah.
I'm seeing Ann shaking her head behind you. All right.
We're just moving this process forward again.
Yep.
So, one of the things that is a requirement from Mass Historic is that we agree to put a preservation restriction on the property. So I don't know that anybody would have any issue with that. It's pretty, self-explanatory. They're gonna give you the money, you're not gonna go knock the house, the property down.
Now, I do have a question. I know that in the process, I think we were looking at the property lines. And did we ever get resolved the question of where the line is compared to the property behind it?
We did. Indeed, in fact, we have a letter of intent from the property owners that surround the building that ground disturbances will be okay, and that at the end of the project, they will donate whatever land that we need in order to accommodate, whether it be a tight tank or septic and plumbing. We still look at those matters. I mean, it's like the town hall. Well, there's nothing here in this town that can be done simply. So we're trying to be as creative as possible to move this forward.
Okay.
So
Did we have
we're
a-
working with town council on the land donation. Are there any questions I can answer?
Just in the land donation, though, I think that when we looked at before, that piece, trying to remember the side. Does the house to the left, is that land part of the,
So it wraps,
Septic?
that parcel wraps behind the records room.
okay, I see.
Do you want to take a look at the land plan?
Is that the one that we had done?
Is there, can we pull this up online so everybody can see it?
If I can find it, hold on, I think I have it here, one second.
That's Gary.
Yeah, I don't know if it was in the packet in number 7 or
I don't know if it's.
that's one of it, part of it or not.
No, I think I can find it, though, hold on.
Okay.
It'll be from,
I think it came in March or April of last year.
In the packet, there are a couple of pictures of it, but it doesn't have a
yeah, I can pull it up.
plot
I do
plan.
have it. Let me just join the meeting real quick.
So that's it with the orange. So that's actually the footprint of it. The orange is the footprint of the,
Wherever the building is.
just because it's definitely
So,
diagonally across the lot line, which is what we were talking about, right?
no, right, so I just was more concerned that, so the folks around it own, it's all the same, pretty much the same owner, right? The Lowells. The only concern is we just have to be cautious with whatever is given to us, that if those lots are already non-conforming, we might have a few more steps to go through,
Yeah,
just to be sure. That's only because size-wise, I just don't know if they meet. If they can't donate land.
Yeah, and then make it
more conforming.
Unacceptable.
Without
right.
going maybe to ZBA or something. I'm sure we can probably make it work if it makes sense, especially for septic and there's a little addition on that building too, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the proposal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. No, because I know at one point we even entertained, does the town try to buy the house as well? But I don't know that that's feasible because now we're in the renting business. I don't know if that's where we want to go. So, I think it's great. I'm glad to see it's actually happening.
Yeah, it'd be really nice.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Number 7, I've been looking for a motion as written.
Sorry.
I got it. I move to authorize the town administrator to sign the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund Certificate of Authorization for 13 Main Street, allowing the town administrator to oversee the grant work and for the select board to sign the letters of intent and letter of support. And the select board to sign it. It might be redundant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Second.
Sorry.
we'll sign both. Intent and
Sorry
support.
about that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Don't leave without signing the document that's in the folder. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There was a letter of approval or.
Yeah, there's, yeah.
well.
yeah, it's all in the packet. That's why we'll make sure we sign it before we leave. All right,
And it's blue.
I get the pic. Oh, it's got to be, all right,
Thank you, Kathy.
okay.
Came
Yeah.
prepared.
I think this one's blue too, so,
All right.
all right. Consider Chapter 90 project request for Neck Hill Road.
I move to approve the Chapter 90 project request in the amount of $196,640 on Neck Hill Road.
Second.
Is there any questions or discussion?
It couldn't come at a better time. We had somebody request fixing Neck Hill Road.
Yeah. Though there's been a few. Not all the emails are copied to everybody.
Yeah, right.
I hear about it a lot too, because I live near there. so.
Right. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. So now we're on 9, consider snow and ice deficit spending. Maybe we can start with, Kim, do you want to go over the numbers or do we want,
Well, see, it's his request.
okay? You feel up to it?
Absolutely.
All right. Take a seat, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, we're looking to deficit spend because there's a couple of reasons. One, the amount of salt we used and the reason it's so high is the salt had gone up like $20 a ton from last year on the cooperative bid. We guarantee that we buy 75% of what we estimate for the year. And then in order to get that bid, we guarantee 75% and they in turn guarantee that there's 110% available. So, which is good for us. I know it seems like we didn't get a lot of snow, but we've been out 15 times salting this year. It's just, it is what it is. And then we have, it's very difficult getting plow drivers. So I guaranteed that each driver is guaranteed 5,000, whether they plow or not, just so we can have them on board. It is very difficult to get plow drivers. I don't know if anybody's seen, we've had signs up down there for 3 years. Luckily, I was able to secure the drivers that we had. We were going to lose 3 good drivers this year. And by doing what I did, we secured them to stay with us for this year. So that's where we're at with that. Finding we don't have any more bad storms or whatever, we should have enough salt to go. We still have to buy like 175 ton to meet our quota for for the 75%. And that is included in this deficit
What's
spend.
when you say the 75% quota, what is that based on?
That's based on 2,000 ton that we estimate per year. So it's like
Because I took a
18,
look at I want to understand, because I took a look at the contract that the bid that you signed with Oxford.
Yeah.
And it looks like the number of tons of salt that we agreed to was significantly higher than it ever had been before.
no, I've always bid for the last, I'm gonna say at least 8 years, 2,000 ton. I request.
Now, have you signed a bid like this before?
Every year.
Okay, because we're being advised that, and of course, we have a change now because it's going to be appointed, but a contract like that really should be signed by the board, not by the highway surveyor. It's not appropriate.
That's not really the actual issue.
Okay, well, let's talk about it then.
The issue is, we don't have that much money in this budget by a long shot, not even to deficit spend. We didn't have it when the contract was signed, back whenever it was signed in July. So, I mean, how many drivers have been guaranteed $5,000?
11.
Right, so between the salt guarantee and the driver guarantee, you're talking $232,000 without talking about hired equipment maintenance, or any of the rest of it, or overtime. Like, that's gonna end up being almost $250,000, which is substantially more than we could even consider. I mean.
What was budgeted for this?
I mean, snow and ice, this is the part that's tricky, and Alan has no control over that. Snow and ice is based upon a 5-year running average of the past 5 years, right? And we are allowed to deficit spend by the state because you can't control how much usage you're gonna have, right? And so you have a couple of options. So you have to, though, by law, budget the minimum amount from the previous year. You can't budget less than the previous amount. And because we have been running low in that account, 193 last year, 210 the year before, 148 the year before, our budget for this year is 194. So when that contract is signed with 11 drivers at $5,000 and salt at a minimum of 177, you're already at 232, which is 40 grand higher than the budget that was approved at town meeting. That's an issue. I mean, that's like, to sit from a process point, it doesn't, it's too late now for that point unless we can get out of the contract. But from a budget standpoint, even if you agree to deficit spend, if you pay these bills, we have nowhere to get this money from. I said this, except for stabilization at a town meeting, because in previous years, we've been able to cover if there was any deficit at all through transfers at the end of the year. This is more than we would ever, like, we use FinCom reserve for 30 grand or 40 grand, or, but 100 grand, 150 grand, that is not a transfer we can cover. The only other option you have when you give the ability to deficit spend is to raise it on the recap the following year, which basically takes away from your ability to spend or even free cash or anything in your next year. So I think we've talked about this before, about buying too much and then cutting into next year, right? And I totally empathize with the ability to not be able to control what's happening. But right as we're about to enter into this very difficult budget year, starting out with already a deficit for potentially next year of 150 for labor and salt we didn't need, seems outrageous. I mean, really.
I guess the issue is that, to put it simply, there's a disconnect between what was actually budgeted at town meeting and what was planned to be spent in July. So when you signed the contract, you were already over the budget. So to come to us now in, March to ask the deficit spend, well, we're already over that now, based on the contract. The only way, like you said, is we'd have to get out of the contract, and that contract does have we do have the right to cancel. Go ahead, Lon.
So I think in past years, we haven't had such maybe light snow. I don't know that it's ever been a question. I don't know that, and if we've been doing it wrong every year, then
Right.
we've been doing it wrong every year. So I don't, it have we, if the number, other than, so we have an increase of $20 a ton, which is, what's that calculate on 2,000 ton, right? 40.
36 grand.
Yeah.
All right, so 36,000 plus the 55 guarantee that that was put into play, right? 'Cause you said 11 at 5 grand, right? So now we're at 90, whatever the number is, right? 90 and change, right? So we have, what did the previous years look like?
Well, the big issue from my standpoint is my understanding, and having been on the FinCom before and gone through this before, the fact that we were front loaded and, set up so that we had to deficit spend. I mean, the way this is set up, we were going to deficit spend in the very beginning, and the spirit of this is that, we have to pass a balanced budget.
No, I understand, but I think we have always assumed we're going to deficit spend every single year. There's never been a year that we said, oh no, we're going to be good this year. We always keep the number low. There was a number that we would spend, I forget, and I think the number was, for some reason, I want to say there was a $60,000 number that we would prepare for snow and ice, knowing that, hey, we know we can deficit spend that. We'll pick up the difference on the other end. I don't know if it slowly got out of hand by us doing that. But again, I think at the end of the day, our thought process has always been the same. And have we been doing it wrong the whole time? Because we were always low and we were always buying salt that was going to be over. We were going to hire drivers. Maybe not, we might not have guaranteed them a $5,000 check. But I do know that you see signs in every town looking for
Right.
drivers, right? And paying, some of them offering crazy money on their flashing signs. However, I don't know. Again, if we've been doing it wrong, obviously we need to fix that. But we didn't do it. We kept it low because you have to go always what your last year was, and we didn't want to drive that number up because now you're going to be.
We've always
forced
been
to use that number.
conservative.
Right, exactly.
No, assuming that we had the option for deficit spending. So that's understood. I think the contract, the stipend that you were promised, that's probably a little bit of a different angle. We weren't necessarily.
Well, let's put it like this. I was never aware of that in the past, nor a contract with a guaranteed minimum. Maybe we always had such a low minimum before that we never had a problem with going over it. And I know there has been some salt supply issues the last couple of years we talked about.
I was just kind of curious. Are we going to go through the whole supply in this season? Everything we've committed to?
Yeah.
buy?
We are sitting at 1,365 tons have been put out already this year.
So about 50% of what we contracted to buy has been used.
By 1,875, we've been put out 1,365 already.
So far.
So far, but I thought we budgeted for, I thought I heard the number 2,000.
That's what I request.
Right. So if we were planning on 2,000 or 22,000 and we've put out 1,000, we've got about 1,000 available that we have not used.
Right. We have some in the shed now and we have a balance that we still have to get.
Do we
Well, I
have
read-
to
Finish
do we
the
have to get
contract.
that balance?
That's my question, Alan, because I read the contract.
Yeah.
And the contract says we can get out of it. It says we can cancel it. So my question is, we may have in the beginning, anticipated we may have to deficit spend, and we may very well need to. But I guess the first question is, do you think the amount of sand or the amount of salt that you have already received, that we've already purchased, is going to be enough to get through? Do you have to take the rest? No, I understand you don't know, but how much is that? Is it for one storm, or how many nights of sanding?
Well, I would ask the question this way.
Availability of 110%
Well,
of what we wanted, right? So that's the benefit to us to be in the contract. If we get out of the contract, the risk is that you can't get.
We
that
can't get
extra
any more.
to the
Well,
100%.
so that's the question, is how much do we have here now? And
Then
right.
you pay more.
The question I would ask too is, historically.
Yeah.
from March 1st forward, how often, how much are we, over
We
years?
should be good.
Okay.
we
so-
should be
so
good
Unless we
with
get
what
the
we
fluke,
have.
we get the fluke or the surprise storm at this time of year.
Right.
Which could happen. It's New England, right?
It's
Otherwise,
in 3 feet, April Fool's Day.
no, I know, but we, in general, what you've seen, the trend demonstrates that there is a reduction in terms of need for
But-
salt and plows.
But at this point right now, if notwithstanding the contract with what we've received and what we paid for, have we already deficit spent or do we still have money left in the budget without going over?
We're over,
So you're already over.
yes.
Okay. So,
But how ugly is that if we jumped out of the contract? I mean, there's a difference of,
right.
is,
Well,
is
that's-
it, is it 50 grand as opposed to the 250 or
Well,
Is
no, the
it
total
210?
deficit right now, we're looking at like 135, I believe it is.
if we kept the contract?
Based upon the
Yeah.
contract.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I
Not
think
based
it's
upon.
175 ton I got left.
Based upon commitment, not actual cost, because their snow and ice actually has a positive balance right now.
Right, what are our, I'd say snow and ice is down to about 12% of the original balance, based on the last time I looked at it. So there is still some money in snow and ice. You spent about 90 of the 104 is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
So did that 90 go towards this contract is my question.
Yes,
Okay. So if we were to buy no more salt, get out of the contract, technically, we would have a balance remaining in snow and ice. But we're running a risk.
because we're running a risk and we still owe a balance to them of, I believe, what is it?
But that's to
70,000.
fulfill the commitment.
Correct.
Not, we have not received
Yes,
salt and not
We
paid them.
have,
Oh, we have.
yes,
So we owe for
You've
salt. We have not paid for all the salt we've received.
correct.
Right.
Is there a penalty for leaving the contract early? Like, what are the consequences if we,
No, the contract says that we have to give them, it's either 10 days or 30 days. But the consequence, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, is that if we get out of it, if they don't have the salt, they don't have to give it to us anymore.
and would it mean something for future years working
With them.
with them? I mean, right.
They could.
So to Lonnie's question, though, right now, we're at a deficit of approximately 70,000. As is,
With salt.
with salt.
No, it's.
Now, have you paid out the stipend?
90.
Does that include the plow drivers or you already?
No, 135 and cloud, including the plow drivers.
So we have not paid them the guaranteed
No.
stipend.
I don't pay that until May.
So with the storms that we've had, they get a minimum of 5,000, right?
Yeah, so if, correct. So you subtract,
So if they've
you
got
subtract
3,000
what they've made hourly while we're here. And they get that balance. I believe it's like 4 they're getting.
So each one's made about
Each,
$1,000.
because different trucks make different money.
Got it. I got it. So they might burn their 5,000 faster than
Correct.
the guy with a little pickup truck.
Right, and I have one plow driver in particular that does the town hall parking lot. He's been plowing with me for 18 years. I call him more often when we only need one truck. I would call that person.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's senior.
Your overtime is still running about 75%, right? You still have about 30 grand in overtime and salary as of last week.
Right.
So, my point would be is I'm not sure you can just look at the 5 times 11 and assume that's an additional cost. It's a net amount unless,
No, because they're contractors, they're not employees, the overtime is still.
okay.
I guess my point at this, what I'm saying is we're already in a deficit situation. So I'm looking for a motion to,
Well, the worst case scenario, I think what you're saying is worst case scenario. If he spent the budgeted amounts and went over in just those 2 spots, it's 255, 562, right?
That's fulfilling the contract?
That's at 177, which is fulfilling the contract and no more, and paying those 11 drivers, and then also using all of overtime and everything else he's got in there is 255. And the impact of spending 255, right, changes the average that we pay for next year. We have to change the FY '24 budget right now to buy
Right.
whatever he's gonna spend. to that amount as the minimum.
Because if we have, if it's planned, we have to do 75% of the 5-year average. So if we're above that now, we're going to have to change that money in that plan in the budget now for what we're going to do to, which is why we're having this discussion now to understand for planning purposes.
Right, it would go from 194 to 208, basically 2085. We'll have to change the line in the budget for 24.
That's what the minimum needs to be.
That's the, right.
For snow and ice or?
For snow and ice. If that's.
Given the increase in the cost of salt and everything else and labor charges, it doesn't sound like that would even be enough.
No, but so what, well,
It doesn't, what it comes down to is it's for planning in the budget because we,
Yeah, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So they're two different, I mean, they're both important, but
We
they're two
want-
different questions. Right.
we want to run the minimum
Right. Exactly. We want to, right.
because it's the only account that can ever be deficit spent.
Right, that's the average, right? The 75% average of the last 5 years would be 208
Gotcha.
with this year. Right, it was 194 for the last 5 years.
Okay.
But it's not like this is a spike in the data. This is going to be a new trend line that, that's going to go up. There's a new trend line that is going to go like that. So the minimum based off of the 5-year trailing average is going to put you in a worse deficit spend for the next 4 to 5 years.
Possibly.
Salt's
Possibly in a way. And again,
Salt's gonna come down and labor charges are gonna come down.
Yeah, salt's probably not gonna come back now.
right.
But
Now that
it,
everything
but
else
it,
is more expensive. So I think your hard cost on what used to be.
well, again, it would
75
depend on the
also.
it would depend on the contract and what we
Well,
purchase.
If you can get it cheaper, yeah.
So, I mean,
So, and the other issue I have, in my eyes, I mean, I don't know if everybody knows this or not, we get 30,000 cars plus a day through town, not just the residents here.
Yep.
If we don't keep the roads halfway decent, which I think they do a really good job at,
Mhm.
I mean, we run the risk of, accidents. And, we're called to plow, because we're not out riding around in the middle of the night.
Yep.
We're called, when the police call, we go.
Yep.
That's it. That's just.
Right.
It's not, I have no control over it. So figuring that, I mean, I know that we're almost better off to plow instead of salt. But either way, you still have to guarantee. I'm saying 2,000.
Yeah, you still,
Look,
I understand you have to treat the roads. I mean, whether there's snow or not and
I've
where the
seen-
temperature is, you got to
at
treat
the
the
end, at
roads.
the end of the day, this was a light year. Had it been snowing like crazy, this conversation would be moot because
Right.
we would just say we had to use it, right? I mean, whether or not, if, look, if we're entering in a contract slightly the wrong way or whatever we're doing, let's just fix that, but.
And that's my
at the-
point.
But at the end of the day, it wouldn't be a conversation if, as in all the past years where it snowed like crazy and we exhausted everything in a matter of 2 months,
Right.
3 months, whereas now, we're at the end of the season
Yeah.
now and we're in, essentially, and again, if it was a good financial year, essentially we'd be saying, hey, likely that salt that we got now is cheaper, put it in the shed.
Yeah, right.
And it'll, essentially, hopefully next year,
We'll give a head start on it. Right.
But look, I do understand both points here.
Right.
I'm just saying it,
And I'm,
If there's a way to minimize costs for this current year, you should take those actions, right? If it's getting out of the contract or whatever, it means that there's less.
Right.
I think that we should look at the number because that 208 number, that trailing 5, based off of the exponential increase we've seen in salt costs and most likely labor costs, that trailing 5 is going to cause us to do more deficit spending than we would have normally planned for the next 4 to 5 years until that trailing 5 catches up.
and all I'm saying is that the need for this board to approve a deficit spend, we're already in that situation regardless of what happens to the contract. So I'm just at this
I think we
point,
just need to,
I'm just looking for a motion.
sorry. Yeah. You want to talk about it a different way one more time? Hold on, where'd I put it?
I move to approve snow and ice deficit spending.
Do I have a second?
Second, does it have to have a number?
We need a number on that?
That's up to you. In the past, you picked a number, but the FinCom has picked a number. I mean,
What's the number?
Right now, it's, I believe it's 135.
if he needs to buy 2,000, then the number that he really is gonna need is $295,000, which is,
I'd like to know if he can get out of the contract in order to,
101.
He can. The short answer is yes.
right, so, but what is the reduction in the cost of the town if we got out of the contract? And to, I think it was Elena's point, do we believe that there is a
Penalty.
negative impact of the relationship with the salt buyer by doing so? I'd like to know those two pieces of information, if we're gonna put a number on.
Where did you get the 265, Kim?
So 295 is the number if you use all of your overtime, spend the 55 in hired equipment, use your equipment maintenance. I skipped sand because there's included. 177 is your salt number and 5 is for equipment potentially, right? So the worst case scenario at the 75% of salt is 295, right? So now if you need to buy 2,000, you're gonna need another 12 grand, right? So that's what I'm saying, your budget is originally at 194. If these guys say 100, you should be pretty close, right? Based upon scenario, in the worst case scenario, you should be up to, you basically have 294,000, which would put you pretty close to it. And then we could put an article on for town meeting and transfer from stabilization, not.
Choice.
We'll have a better number at that point for everybody to
You know in
understand.
May if you need it or not.
Right.
I just
So
hate to
let's-
kick it
so-
to the fall.
So let's set,
Because
let's,
it's risky.
right, it is, yeah. Let's just set the deficit number at 100 right now, no more than 100. If things get weird and you have to come back, but hopefully we're gonna be under that 100 based upon a few caveats that we gotta work out, right?
The minimum salt that we need to buy is 1,875, not 2,000.
Oh, I understand that,
Yeah.
but we're gonna try to, I think what we're gonna try to do is, if you guys feel, or if you need to buy another 200 ton or something like that, just to make sure that we've got enough to get through, May and that, in the first part, we're getting close here, and, the 10-day forecast at the moment looks semi-good, but that change, that could change in a
With
few days,
the-
right?
As it stands right now, outstanding bills, including the salt, to bring it to the 1875 is, I believe, 135.
What we need to buy to make that 1875 is.
Right, with the subcontract.
179.
Okay.
179 tons to make that contract.
Right.
Which is 17 grand
$17,000.
to make the minimum on the salt.
So then
alone.
if you take
So you're,
all the,
Once he's got, so, I mean, we know what the obligation is. It's 177. That's not gonna change. That's the minimum. So it doesn't matter how much he's already taken or not, if we cancel it or not, right? That's secondary. The number is locked.
this 255 number, which is what you're projecting, how much is that over what's been budgeted?
So if he spends every bit of everything, it's really 295.
Right,
Okay. It's $100,000 over the approved budget of 194.
okay.
Which is $100,000 more than the actual from last year. So that's what I'm saying, 100's a pretty even number. And that should be enough, in theory, to even go up to 2,000 if he had to or more, because I'm maxing out the cost in his other lines, like.
Right, so worst case,
At least,
100K.
yeah, so worst case scenario, we're at 100,
yeah.
and let's do everything we can to reduce it. That's all.
Right.
Right.
So the motion
Is
The motion
100K.
is to deficit spend up to an additional 100,000 over the budgeted amount.
Correct.
So moved.
All right, so it's been made and
Second.
seconded. All right. All those in favor?
All right,
All right, thank you very much. Thanks,
So
Alan.
just one thing, what are the actions coming out of this meeting to start to make sure we can mitigate costs? I'd love to capture that so we can have old business on our agenda and make sure we follow through on some of these things. So there
Well, I
could be
think-
some specific actions here, right?
Specifically, what we need to find out is what salt do we need? And then to cancel the contract so we don't have to pay for salt that we don't have the money to pay for right now. And we just find out if Oxford, who we signed the bid with, is okay with that.
well, it's not up to Oxford, it's Lead Salt. I have a pretty good rapport with the owner of Lead Salt. I can call him and ask him
Great.
what,
We need an opinion from town council on the contract itself. Are we comfortable? and
It's
just go
pretty black letter. I mean, it says it right in there that we can cancel with with no.
we
So
just
the
gotta
action-
send him a letter.
Action is to follow up with Lead Salt to determine if we can exit without buying a minimum amount we think we need. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
Right. I can find that out. That's not a big deal.
Okay.
But I believe with what we have now, outstanding bills, we need to deficit spend 137, 135.
Up to that amount.
Yeah,
You're
up
saying
to
up to that number,
right.
we don't need
Yeah.
135,000
That's-
extra. You're
Right.
saying up to that amount, which is
That will pay what we have outstanding.
So.
That's
so-
outstanding
100.
bills to pay now.
So, so maybe a second action, Kim, is just to kind of solidify and confirm what it is we have to spend based on versus what we committed to. So what have we received that we owe on versus
Yeah.
what we committed to? Just
Then send all of that. You have all
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that,
just, I
Kim,
think we
right?
just kind of, I've heard a lot of
You
numbers
have all
go
the
back and forth.
spreadsheets.
So maybe we can kind of. So there might be two actions coming out of this discussion.
I mean, based on this, what he's saying, I can assume if the minimum is 177, it's another 120 that's gonna be sent, that has to come out of salt. And I'm assuming you're paying it out of hired equipment for the drivers, and that has only been, which is original budget of 22 is actually 55, he's only spent 7,500, so there's another
Yeah.
4,000, 40,000 there.
So your point is there might be some movement we could make and not just necessarily deficit spend 100% of the, what you're saying we owe.
Well,
But my point is this, we can go around
I
in
was look-
circles. I'd prefer to kind of solidify it, send it back, and we can all
I think.
touch the stone.
Right, I think 100 is fine until, I mean, the variables we're talking about are whether or not, like, he has money for, he has 18 grand for equipment maintenance, that's a variable,
Yep,
right?
yep.
He's got, you know, there's money in here for purchased equipment, that's a variable.
Yep.
It, you know, I assume over time, he's gonna spend, if he's gonna be spending the rest of it, you know, so there is some room, it's only like 20,000, but that could be enough to cut it down.
But I think this is also something we gotta track very closely between now and ATM to make sure that we know what the exact number is we might need for
As soon as we get to May,
stabilization.
we'll know exactly what the number is,
E-
as long as all the bills come in.
This is my ask. I would like to know before May what we potentially gonna owe, and as it changes, I would love to see it
Right.
in a more real-time fashion.
I'll
so we
track
know
it
what
all.
we're
We
heading
can,
into.
we can track that.
I know you can.
Very simple. We keep track of everything.
I know. It's in the folders over there.
Yeah.
I was flipping through papers. I saw them.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Guys
guys.
down.
FinCom, do you want to call your meeting to order?
Open FinCom meeting at 7:23, March 15th.
You gonna share the? What do you want me to do?
Pull it up.
I don't know.
Let's. I'd ask the Minden Upton Regional School District to come up.
Sorry, that's for, Thanks, guys. How are we doing
How
tonight?
you doing? Do you need another chair? Do you want do you want Sean to come up or? You want to come up? Sure there is.
The super comfy one.
Sure there is. There's a fancy one over there, Sean.
Wait a minute. So you made us sit over here? Jeez.
Yeah, well. Right. By the way, just before we, before we do anything else, I just want to officially recognize, for those that don't know, we actually have a Nipmuc High graduate who is attending West Point Academy. And I found out about this last year. We just didn't have enough time to recognize before she went off. But Sean's daughter, Lucy, right? And she came to a meeting. We met our congressman at the time, Jim McGovern. And I stood there and she told him that she would very much like to attend West Point. And each, member of Congress gets one nomination each year. And Lucy got it, and she's finishing up her first year, right?
Well, she's in the middle of it, yeah, but she's, everybody, the district, everybody's mighty proud of her. And she's also, I think she's taking on the responsibility of of some of the recruiting efforts for West Point, and she plans to come back here and start preaching the news too, so. It's a really good school. We're learning, I'm learning a ton about military history right now.
Well, tell her the select board is proud of her.
100%. That's
Right.
awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you very
All right.
much.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
And with that, let's talk about your budget.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'll wait.
Let me find the agenda then. I didn't get that far. You can start talking, Maureen, while I figure this out.
Get the presentation up and running. I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak to our school budget for this next school year. Jump into the goal page just so we don't waste any time, but we have 4 goals tonight in our presentation. First is to provide an overview of the district's budget development process, just to give you a sense of how we develop our budget. I want to communicate a summary of the current priorities for the school district for this year, and also project out a bit as well into the future. And we'll present our proposed budget. It's gone through a number of iterations within the last week. And I want to begin by thanking a lot of the members and Mike's been on most of our recent meetings. It's been really helpful to have ongoing collaboration and members at either the school committee meetings or at the our budget subcommittee meeting that help work through some of this as well. And we also have been asked to present some of the future challenges that we know that we're identifying, and we'll just give like highlights on that. We certainly can, dive into that in a future date. I know we're presenting basically the budget this year.
We're up on the screen, yeah.
So, all right, so with our budget development process, it's really a year-round process. We're right here where the arrow is, close to the budget hearing and certification of our budget, which is scheduled to be next Monday. But I go through the timeline on the next slide. We're going to go kind of quickly through, but we can always go back, just so you know. So on the next slide, it gives you a sense of our personal timeline for the development of our budget. So, we set some of the parameters going back to September at the beginning of the school year. And then I have all of my department heads send in their budget development forms. And we, around that time, we're closing out the budget, previous budgets. We have school department budget requests due, and then I meet with them. And then what we've been doing the last couple of years is just having presentations at school committee meetings. And the purpose of that is for anyone who wants to see publicly some of the asks and priorities and what we're planning for the future. They can hear directly from our principals and our department leaders. So that you can, we have lots of links in there. Our guiding principles in our process that we've identified is to be collaborative, transparent. We want to make sure it's collaborative with towns, but also internally as well. And as much as we're able to make sure that people are aware of all of our priorities and what we're working through. Of course, it's a student-centered business for schools. So our decision-making, first and foremost, is what the best interests are for students, academically, socially, emotionally, and behaviorally when we make decisions and we prioritize. And I'll speak to that in a moment. We also have in our budget a lot of short-term needs, but you'll see some of the additional needs that have been put forward. Something else that I did with my team and internally was to really identify the many layers that go into the prioritization of our budget. At the top, we are always, I just want you to be aware, we are thinking about the financial considerations, the town considerations, we're thinking about stability, sustainability, not having it be just 1 year. Let's figure out this year. We're really trying to project out. As hopefully you might be aware if you pay attention anything with our presentations that we do, we're driven by our strategic plan and our goals. We're in our last year of our last 5-year strategic plan. That really drives what we do. And we also have a lot of community input and goals, which leads to the community expectations in Mendon and Upton that are expected in the high quality education that we have in our school district. We're always looking for student safety and well-being, high quality instruction, to have our students be college and career ready, as you just heard a recent example, and to provide as many programmatic choices that we can. Some of our district and school goals, this past year have been focused on data inquiry, something called MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support, where we have systems of support for all of our students, portrait of a learner and future planning. And some of our fixed costs, that's what you tend to hear a lot about in our budget presentations, is the needs for student support service delivery that are mandated, our curriculum instructional needs, the sustainability of tech infrastructure, and also you're going to hear about our building and grounds needs that are arising. In our budget development decision-making, we start at the bottom. We want to maintain class sizes, programs, services that are currently being provided to our students. And then we focus in on any of those critical or mandated needs. I will speak a little bit about some of the needs that have come out of the pandemic. I'd like to say we're completely we're back to normal, their new normal, whatever that is. We are not. We are still recovering from the pandemic in many ways. We also focus in on strategic investments and also programmatic enhancements. So one thing that I have in my departments is, different ways we can reallocate resources. I asked for that. I have them identify tech needs, building needs. And so I'm getting input from multiple department leaders in this process. And they'll say, here's a more efficient way that we could be running this, or maybe we can combine something here. So we get input for different types of enhancements as well. So for this year, our goals in our budget, if we start at the top, obviously we want to continue the high quality service and instruction for students and maintain those level services. On the right, you see kind of the image. I don't know how well you can see it with our multi-tiered systems of support. But in the middle, you have the schoolhouse. Doesn't look like that here, but if you look on the bottom, the tier 1 universal support, I just point that out. That's much of our focus this year in post-pandemic, is how can we meet the needs of all of our students there, but some need more targeted support in tier 2. And you're going to hear a little bit about tier 3 as well, that we're identifying for needs. And then on the outside is what all of us are doing here. We have the leadership drivers and all of you as leaders in the towns, and competency drivers, and also the financial aspect for this. I just talked about multi-tiered. So on the bottom, future ready, in the bottom right-hand corner, if you're not familiar, that's our portrait of a learner. Those are the competencies that we are working on from the moment our students are coming in, and to develop all the way through their education here in Mendon Upton. And so they can be future ready and ready for whatever they need in the future world that's changing pretty rapidly. That's that's the fastest I've ever done it. Some people have heard me do that 3 times already, so we can always go back to that, but we're going to switch over. I know we're here for some of the numbers as well, so I'll switch over to Jay.
All right. Hi, everybody. How you doing tonight? All right. So tonight we're going to talk about basically the numbers and the money. The proposal for FY24 from the school district. Our budget is looking at about $40,705,000. It is a 1.56 increase over the previous year, a net increase of $624,366. So this proposal is based on feedback we got from the towns as far as what they could handle within their capacity. It was driven, quite honestly, this year more from Upton than from Mendon, in that they had some limitations that we had to sort of fit within. Some of the adjustments we made to the initial proposal that we put forward was just a week ago, right? A week and a half ago. Our health insurance, the first proposal we got was an 11.8% increase. We told them that wasn't going to happen. I'm budgeting 9.5. I'm hoping to hit 8. I don't know where the town ended up, but
4.31.
4.31. So you did better than us. But health insurance is what it is. So that's one thing we're going to bring down. We've reduced some of the new positions that we had proposed. We're eliminating. Typically, we try to provide some funding for the unanticipated, just in case things go a different direction. We've kind of eliminated most of that in our budget. And we're trying to estimate enrollment, but enrollment's really a moving target that's going to change dramatically over the summer. But as of what we have right now, we had to base our staffing levels on that.
Now, why do you think it's going to change over the summers? Anything different than previous
It
years?
has always changed over the summer. Every year we get an influx of,
So it's no different than.
no
it's
different
always
than
been.
anything else, right? We're
Yeah,
just,
basically, we try to go off of these March 1 numbers that we
Right.
have at this point. But the biggest growth is over the summer, especially in the younger grades. And I have a document later. We were tracking it just to see, because it's come up, they've been talking about it. We have students, when we had the pandemic, that went out. When they just stayed at home, homeschool, different options, and not as many had come back. Now they're more and more coming back, and they're more moving into town. And it's happening during the school year, where we're seeing all increases rather than increases in enrollment and throughout the summer. So it could, in most cases, it's a swing sometimes of 3 to 5 in a grade. For the most part, we're pretty static, or have been the last couple of years. We're seeing a little shift. So we had 14 more in grade 1 last year, and that was a lot in comparison. And that can really shift class size numbers, so we're tracking that closely.
so this sort of breaks out how what percentage of our budget goes toward what category. You can see 52% is going directly to instruction. The benefits and fixed charges, which are many of the supports for our staff, are about 18%. The one thing that's probably a little bit less, which I think we're unique in and compared to other districts, is our out-of-district tuition costs are actually coming down a little bit. We'll talk a little bit later about the 14% increase the state put on all those tuitions. For us, we've gone over the last, I'd say, 5 years from about 34 kids out of district to 20. And that's what's bringing that number in, in better shape. And we're also getting better circuit breaker reimbursement.
Sorry, real quick, when you say out of district, is that kids that
Special ed.
choicing out? Oh, just, okay.
Yeah,
These
and-
are-
Yeah, and it's students we can't don't have the programming to meet
I
their
understand.
needs in district. And so when he talks about when we've had a little bit of money in a line item, that's one area that we have, because during the school year, we could have a student tomorrow
Understood. I get it.
go out, and then we need funds to be able to
I
pay
understand.
for that. And those can range from 40,000 to
Right.
250,000 spending.
That percentage also doesn't just include the moving of money for Norfolk Aggie.
No, it's got nothing to do with Norfolk Aggie. This is specifically, therapeutic type programming.
Yep.
All right, so what are the big drivers in our budget? That's what we get to first. Transportation, we just had a new bid and awarded a new contract. It's a 10.4% increase. It's about 220,000. Health insurance at 9.5 is a little under 200,000. Salaries for our 400 and some odd employees that we have are up about 1.1 million. The out-of-district tuition is up 103,000, but that 14.5% increase that the state allowed all the schools to charge, had we maintained the same number of students, would have been more like 350 to 400,000. So for us, that's fairly good. We are putting $200,000 into our budget to support the iPads. I'm sure you all remember I think purchased through some town money. Now, seems like a long time ago at the beginning of the pandemic, iPads, but they are now at the end of life. And we have never had a recurring cost in our budget for that, so we need to build that in. Worcester Retirement, I think we did a tiny bit better than the town, but it's still up $100,000. I think you were up about 120, right?
2%.
Yeah, it's everybody's getting hit hard there. Payroll tax based on salaries is going to be up. Property and casualty, I haven't gotten quotes yet, but I usually budget an extra 5%. We had a little bit, about 180,000 into buildings and maintenance. We're having a lot of issues. The buildings are now 25 years old, except for Misco, that's 60 years old. Things are breaking down that we have to spend money on, and everything seems to cost more if we can get people to actually come and do the work. This kind of just shows you the ups and downs, and we'll get into some of the districts of it, the specifics of what's going up and what's going down, because you just saw back here $2 million in increases, but yet we have a $600,000 increase, and might wonder how we're making that work. So we're going to get into that next. This switch is on. All right, so on the revenue side, I know everybody's heard that the governor's putting lots of money into education, Chapter 70, Student Opportunity Act, all kinds of things. None of that money's coming to Mendon and Upton. So the facts are that 71% of Chapter 70 money of the new increase is going to 32 districts in the state, of which we're not one of them.
Thanks, Governor.
93% is going to 106, of which we are not one of them. And Pretty much 67%, and we are one of them, are getting the minimum, which is $30 a student. So although there's a lot of money going into education, it's not coming to Mendon and Upton. Chapter 70 at $30 a student. You know, this is how we break out our budget. We're getting an increase of a little over $60,000. It's about a 0.5% increase. Transportation did get increased. They base it on 2 years ago, our actual costs, and it's about 88% of our actual costs. I did hear, you know, there was some talk that it was going to be 100%. It's not going to be 100%. It potentially is going to go up. So this is a variable that could help us down the road. But right now, that's what's on the cherry sheet is 146,000. Charter tuition is something we have students in Mendon and Upton that choose to go to charter schools, which is their choice. You see in FY23, you see a number that was on the cherry sheet of 143,958. We are not going to get that much this year. We're going to get about 88,000 because instead of the 20 students that they base that number on, we only have 17 now. There is a corresponding drop on the expenditure side, so it should match out so that it doesn't really impact our budget, but we're getting a decrease beyond that for next year. So we're only going to get 71,000 for that. So the net increase from the state is 134,000. It's a little bit less than 1%. On the Upton piece, their minimum contribution was up $540,000. They had told us back probably about a month ago that they could really handle a net increase of about 400,000. But they, and I think Mendon has done the same approach, they looked at FY23 and first took out of that what the cost is going to be or was in FY23 for Norfolk Aggie. So the reality is that the net increase from Upton from our budget from 23 to 24 is 256,000. It's about a 1.8% increase. Debt's going down. We're in the last year of the debt on all of these projects. After FY24, those debts are paid off completely. Net increase to Upton for debt included is 400, or not debt not included, I'm sorry, is 404,000 if you take the Norfolk Aggie and apply it that way. If you don't, and you just look at our expenditures or our revenues, it's about a $240,000 increase, all included. All right, so that's the Upton piece. The Mendon piece, your minimum contribution went up 275,000. Transportation, because it's up, there's a reason those numbers are down, is because we're getting more in reimbursement, even though our costs are up. The Operation Additional plays out, so the net increase from 23 to 24 is actually a decrease to Mendon of a little over $64,000. Again, if you take the approach of taking out of that the Norfolk Aggie piece, then it would be a net increase of about 210,000 because the town is picking up that Norfolk Aggie cost based on this year's amounts. Net numbers, though, you're down about 85,000 in total. It's a drop of about 0.5 to 0.75% as far as the overall assessment to the town, as far as what you paid us this year and what you're going to pay, you know, what we're going to assess for next year, assuming the budget is approved.
I don't know if at this time, before we go on, in case other people watching are unfamiliar with the Norfolk Aggie and the regulations, if you wanted to just explain.
Yeah. Does everybody understand what's going on with
Just wanna make
Norfolk
sure.
Aggie?
Well, I'm sure there's some people here and some people that watch it don't understand that we have students that go to Norfolk Aggie.
Right.
And they used to bill the Mendon Upton school
Correct.
system. Now they're not. They're going to bill the town directly.
Right. The state law has always been that the town of residence that the students come from are supposed to pay the bill. Very similar to BBT. Mendon always gets a very small amount of Chapter 70 money for those students. But in the past, like when I started, I think we had 3 students at Norfolk Aggie. It was not a big deal. The tuition was pretty cheap. We now have between Mendon and Upton, 15 students there. And we have applications, so the numbers increased dramatically. So it's gotten to a point, and when I talked to the state, and we talked about this a year ago when we presented, the state said, no, you're not supposed to pay that. Those bills are supposed to go to the town. So that's where that adjustment is happening. We didn't do it in FY23 because it was too late in the budget
transition,
process. It didn't seem appropriate to just like all of a sudden come in and say, okay, here's what it at. This way you've had some time to plan for it. So that's what's happening with the Norfolk Aggie piece. And it's really not just Norfolk Aggie. It's any non-resident vocational school. In the past, we have had a couple of students go to Tri-County in Franklin. Those are the only 2 that I recall in my time in the school district. But it's mostly Norfolk Aggie and then BBT, which, you know, you deal with on your own anyway. All right. On the district side, our funding. We have E&D, which is excess and deficiency, very similar to the town's free cash. We are going to put $1 million from that into next year's budget, which is an increase of $300,000. That's one of the things that's going to help us offset that. We've done fairly well financially through the pandemic with all the federal grants, which is why we have the ability to do this. So it seems like the right time to do it. That Upton Shared Technology, we are doing a sort of a shared position between the town of Upton and ourselves for tech support. And that's what they pay us for 50% of the cost of that. The bond premium relates to debt and is pretty minimal. Transferring from revolving is accounts that we have. We have several programs we run that are profitable. We take funds from that and use it to appropriate. It's been $150,000 since I was on school committee 20 years ago. Interest is what it is. Medicaid reimbursement, that is getting better. There was a time when we were only getting about $25,000, but they've opened up what we can get reimbursed for. It's any Medicaid eligible student for any services in the nurse's office, any support services for instruction. There's a lot of things that we can apply, and the special ed department does a really good job of staying on top of that. So we're putting an increase there. So we're looking at about $334,000 as an increase from us, from our own accounts. The big picture of everything. So the revenue increases, we're going to increase our school choice appropriation. So school choice, students can choose to go to other schools. We bring choice in. We typically profit around $400,000 to $450,000 a year by accepting choice students. Again, we've been able to build up some funds in those accounts. So we're going to appropriate $1 million out of that toward this budget. Circuit breaker is reimbursement for out-of-district tuition, and they have started reimbursing us for transportation costs as well. So this year, we're a year ahead on this. So what we get in FY23, we must spend in FY24, and what we're getting in FY23 is $1,258,911. So that will offset out-of-district costs next year, which is what that's used for. E&D we just talked about. We have one grant. It's a federal grant for special ed entitlement. We use basically for paraprofessional salaries. Again, because we are having difficulty hiring people and we can't fill positions, we're not using all of those funds so we can carry them over to next year. We're going to use some of that. Our retiree health insurance plan, we are changing that to a different provider. It's still Harvard Pilgrim, which is what we use, but it's a different type of policy, reducing the cost by 25% for both the retirees and for us. So that's about a $300,000 savings. We have a bunch of textbook leases. Typically, when you do textbook licensing for digital textbooks, they're 6-year licenses, but they won't let you finance it over 6 years. You can only finance it over 2 years. So those leases were paid off in this current year. So that's been a savings on our side as well. And then the last piece we talked about is the Norfolk Aggie piece. We paid $406,674 this year for Norfolk Aggie. We won't be paying it next year. So that releases funds to be, reallocated somewhere else. And that's really just a transferring of those expenses to the two towns.
So I go back to this image.
You want to,
Yeah,
before
we
you,
can pause
yeah,
and
is there
get into
any
stuff.
questions on any of those numbers that I just went through? Because I did go kind of quick. I've read them like 17 times in the last week. I wake up talking numbers now. Everybody's,
Remaining in that school choice appropriation account after FY24.
if we take, well, so right now there is about, I'm going to guess, I do have it further in the back here, but I want to say it's about 2.5 million in there. We're going to probably put, well, we're supposed to take 800,000 out. We're also supposed to, you want me to try and find it? We're going to put another 400,000 in. I expect after FY24, we're going to be down in the 1.5 million range. It still leaves us with a, which slide is it? Yeah, I'm not going to scroll all the way through. Yeah. Slide 51 of our 370 slide presentation.
Yeah, we can kind of get down.
So what is?
Yeah, can you read it?
Yeah, so I got this there for that. Let's go to the next one.
Oh, there you go.
So it's at the end of this year, it should be 2.2 million, take $1 million out, but we put 400 in. So about 1.6 million. So it's still in fairly good shape as far as that goes.
And same with, and so circuit breaker, you have to apply.
Yes.
What about E&D? What remains potentially after?
E&D, I'm anticipating it's going to be around 1.4 million at the end of next year. It's at 1.9 million right now. So again, both of those, you're allowed to keep 5%, which is around 2 million for us. I'm thinking 3.5%, 4% is the good spot, but again, you know, the more we have there, the better it protects us. And that's one of the reasons we're taking out some of those, what I call protection within the budget, where you say, well, let's budget for one more out of district in case it comes up. If that does come up, we're going to have to hit E&D, or we're going to have to get school choice in one of those accounts in order to cover those things. And it's mostly because, you know, we understand that the towns just can't print money. I mean, we just heard a discussion about snow and ice. There's only so much that you can get in any given year. And now I turn it back to the academic side.
I just come back to this because when we talk about staffing, this is how we prioritize our staffing needs. And so it's color coded. I like the colors. So we'll go to the next page, which will give you a little background here. So what I've tried to communicate last year and this year is what our initial staffing needs are that come forward from our department chairs, from our principals. I'm not going to go through that whole list, but I can say that that number of positions is similar in number to what we've been receiving for requests the last few years. So what we're very strategic about it, and we start with level services. In our proposal that came forward that we brought to school committee about a week ago, a little over a week ago, you can see the middle, we had a number of, I'm going to talk about them in a second, but you have some related to level services is, I would say, everything in the blue. And then more critical needs and enhancements are in that green area. Because we've had some changes over the last week on the revenue side, we've reduced in a number of areas, as Jay mentioned, and we also reduced in some of our requests. So as of today, and we'll be going forward and working through this between today and Monday's presentation as well, that those are the remaining positions that we have there. So I'm just going to talk through, but this is the money aspect of it with the reductions. And then I first want to just talk a little bit about class size. Now, we don't have, some districts might have a mandated class size policy that you have to stay within. We don't have a mandated class size policy in our district. However, we know what is good practice and what is the best possible scenario for education for our students at different grade levels. So typically, our maximum preferred at a K-1 or K, almost kind of going into grade 2, but K-1 for sure would be to have under 20 students. Now, in our kindergarten classes, we're very fortunate. We've had this, as long as I've been here, it was in place before I came here 10 years ago. We do have paraprofessionals in each of our kindergarten classes, so we can go a little bit above. If we didn't, there's no way you can have more than 20 kindergarteners with one adult. It doesn't, I don't recommend it. But so we can go a little bit higher to 22 or 23. Kindergarteners are most unpredictable area for enrollment, because even right now I have some numbers, they're going to move so much all the way through the summer into the beginning of the school year. In the grades 2 to 3, ideally, you can have a few more, but just knowing the years K into 3 are the most formative years for learning how to read. And obviously, we all know how important that is. And so we want to keep those class sizes. The lower we have our first student teacher ratio, the more impactful our practice is. And then when we head into more the middle years, when you hit that 25 range, not only are our classrooms in most places crowded, they are, particularly at MISCO. Some of them, they're all different sizes at MISCO. Some are a lot smaller than others. Some, you don't feel it as much, but it's packed when you get over 24, and you can feel it. And at the high school, it varies. So sometimes you might have an AP class that has 12 students. You may have a different class in music. That you can't really do average class sizes in the same way, and set that it is really dependent on different types of classes that you have. But common practice. I mean, in my past practice, I was a high school teacher and I've taught classes of 32. That was pretty much a nightmare. And it was really hard to do. And I've taught all the way down to like 10, class of 10. So when you're in that 20 to 25 range, that's a pretty typical class size. We've been really fortunate in the last number of years to have that kind of range, but sometimes we'll go over. So why do I give you that background? This is why we have some of the requests that have come forward. We're starting to see a creeping in of enrollment numbers at our elementary in some places. And some of that has been sudden during the year or right before the start of the school year. So these are the requests that came in, and grades 1 and 4, these are requests at Memorial, where we're seeing a little bit more growth. And if we add an additional teacher, the class size would go down to 18 students approximately, and this is with current numbers. So we had the biggest increase this year in grade 1, so we can anticipate they might get larger. So so that's one request. The other one was a grade 4, where we currently have 4 teachers in grade 3, so the class size number is about 19. But we only have 3 teachers in grade 4. They're recommending keeping the lower class size for that particular grade as well. And so that's one of their priorities. What we did is in our first initial budget request that we brought forward before we had to make more reductions, we had both of those in there. Now we've said 1 elementary, and then we'll keep an eye on the enrollment and see if anything else kind of works out for us internally or state funds later on. Grade 6, we just have a unique in a lot of our grades in the middle school. We have 8 teachers. We have this teaming model. It works out really well with all of the subjects. In that grade, incoming for that grade 6, we have an increased class size coming in compared to what we have right now in grade 6. And as a result, there's not balance in all the classes because we're down 1 teacher. It's kind of complicated. I have another slide if we're interested. But right now we have taken that out and are looking to see if there are ways that we can reallocate within the building and see if we can make an adjustment for this coming year. The grade 2 Spanish immersion, as you know, we're really proud of our Spanish immersion program that we have in the district and have had for over 26 years. And this is a must. We can't not do this. We currently have 39 students in grade 1 with 2 teachers and moving up, and we have incoming 2 teachers. So we're kind of building out the last few years, the 2 classes instead of 1. And with that, there's a need because you can't have 39 second graders in class. I don't recommend that. So that we're keeping that in the budget.
Does that also, from the grade 2 SI, does that also allow a strand of SI to remain in Clough?
Currently, I'm trying to think, it's grade 1 at Clough, grade 1, grade. Yeah, yes. Yes. That class right now is in first, we'll be going to second. There's a whole nother story with SI and like we could get into.
Yeah,
about.
my first grader's in SI, so so I'm very interested in this.
So we could talk offline too.
Yeah. Just some thoughts on how to address it.
Yeah, we're really seeing one thing I can say in general, we're seeing great benefits that we hadn't anticipated with the fact that we've had to combine the last couple of years because we haven't had enough. We just had lower enrollment at Clough. So we didn't have enough to run a full class there the last couple of years, but we had enough to run 2 and not block anybody out who was interested by having students from Mendon go to Upton. And as a result, what we've found is we're getting this great, rich environment around Spanish immersion because we're now building some of that movement. So we haven't made any changes or suggestions, but it's come up like, hey, should we think about having it all in one school? So that's come up. But we're still making sure that we have the teachers on those apps.
Thanks, Maureen. I don't know if you want to go back just a couple of slides. Is this grade 1, 4, and 6?
Yeah,
Another one?
exactly.
Which one?
So the 1, 4, and 6, those teachers are no longer in the budget being proposed.
Yeah, we just kept the one elementary for them to look. So we're down one and we're down the middle.
So what we're actually showing in in that slide is
Yeah.
actually the impact
yeah.
of not having those allocations.
Correct.
So.
And this is
just to be clear-
additional teachers.
Yes.
Yeah, these are additional.
So just to be clear, we're trying to make a budget fit within the town capabilities, but we are running into problems maintaining level services. We don't know. It's like predicting snow. We have no idea how many more children we're gonna get into the school for the coming year. We have to manage those problems as we encounter.
In the next slide though, so right there, so what grades are not getting the additional teachers here?
1, 4, and 6.
No,
No.
one elementary thing, so either one or
Elementary.
four,
So I left it
and grade 2
open
SI.
because we'll see what that enrollment is as it comes in between now and the end of the school year. So they may choose, their first priority was the grade 4, it was a little bit higher number, but they may say, ooh, 4 more students just came in grade 1, and they would say, we have to have it in grade 1. And also,
It's
Yeah,
kind of,
that's-
it's kind of a float at the moment.
Yeah.
yeah, and the other thing too is if it gets to be too high, we have added overall the years, we figure out a way,
Yeah.
to do it because that's sometimes we just have to, or sometimes it's so much we have to add,
If you need to add
Yeah.
after the budget's certified, the town assessment won't change, but that's
Right.
what Jay, you've said,
Yeah.
that's why we have our reserves. If we
Correct.
need to do something, you're gonna tap and recertify
Right.
a higher budget.
And
Yeah, and
then,
then they're in the budget, so we
Right,
know
right.
going
So-
into next year.
And
But
there's-
but from
there's
our
other things-
standpoint, we need to know for go forward that the next fiscal year, there's been headcount adds, things like that, so we should expect a little bit bump in the assessment when it comes our way next year.
There's some flexibility there, but as you start to bleed off the excess money, now you're talking about a situation where it's like a one-time allocation of
Yep.
funds. You're not really
Right.
refreshing that money, and you're going to constantly run a deficit from that point forward.
I can elaborate a little bit as we go on some of we added in from last night, some of the suggestions too. Oops. If you go to the next one, this hurting. And you may have noticed there were some items that were in green that we still kept. Instead of keeping all the level of service, we're making some choices there, or figuring some things out, which are more of like a one-year solution. We also are looking to meet some of the, when I talked about tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3, meet some of those tier 2 and tier 3 targeted supports, and that's what the therapeutic programming is. So if we were at, for example, if we add in a therapeutic program at the middle school and we have 1 or 2 students who need we typically wouldn't be able to service, let's say, their high needs in district because we didn't have such a program, then they go out. That could be 80,000 right there. So it's almost we're being preventative and proactive from a fiscal mindset because we can keep students in. And ultimately, we want to keep students in their home district, in their home schools, and provide what they need here. That is always our goal, but we haven't always been able to provide that because we don't have the layers of, tiered programs in our district. So what we've noticed, though, in the last couple of years, it would be a few students. We're seeing a much bigger increase of mental health needs across the board. So when I go, I'm doing strategic plan focus groups. What is front of mind for all of the educators and teachers are the continued mental health needs, behavioral supports of students that we weren't seeing. We saw some, but it's really increased post-pandemic. We could go into, why we think a lot of those things are happening, but it is where we're at.
And this has been a consistent request that your predecessor had too, going back 7 or 8 years.
various forms,
Yeah.
correct.
So we've done a really excellent job. We used to have contracted services externally. We brought it in. So now by having some full-time BCBAs that work with behaviors, it's been
Do some.
huge help in all the classrooms and helping teachers. But some students still need help outside of the classroom at times or to work through and get clinical support. So what we're proposing, what the original request was to have programming at all 3 levels. That would be an ideal world if we can do that. Based off of the data and input that I received this week and the need to reduce, we are putting forward, we need to have a therapeutic special educator to have one of these programs. And so we're recommending keeping that at the middle school. We have some students coming up from fourth grade that will have needs in the middle school. We have some still at the middle school identified that this could be really helpful. A few years ago, we added in some additional adjustment counselors that have been really helpful, in a return to school service where students who are going out for crises and hospitalizations have been able to stay in school. But this would be a program beyond, that's temporary, funded to help, but this is a program that would help some in a more clinical way. So we're keeping the psychologists that we would need at the elementary, but not building out the whole program at the elementary, but keeping the school psychologist role, which can help start the program, but really get at the clinical training and behaviors that our students really desperately need right now. And so we're keeping that as a high priority beyond, which will really help us in the long term. So what I have here, just some examples of what you might see, in particular the elementary level, without the program. These are behaviors we're seeing today by students in our schools. With the program, we'd be able to have more clinical support. We'd have safe spaces to teach and address these needs. And it would also help more with the transition for students who are in out of placement or hospitalization to remain in our school district. On the bottom just gives you a little bit of data. So we have students who are, as an example, at the middle school, students are on 504 plans. And if you look at for it being health, emotional needs, it's close to 53%. And so those are mandated services that we provide. And so it's data showing we have a number of students can really benefit from additional support. Any questions on that before we move? Okay.
And then, so we've talked about a variety of things that potentially could change on our end. The things that we have that are still variables, I'm still hoping for a better insurance rate than the 9.5% I have in the budget. The Medicare enhanced change that we've already taken and implemented in the budget, it has not been finalized yet, but that's the pricing we have. It's just a matter of putting it together. Out of district needs always are there. The move-in law, so there's a law that says if somebody moves into your district, that's an out-of-district placement, and it happens before April 1, we own the tuition next year. If it's after April 1, then the sending district, the town they come from, they own the tuition for one more year. So between now and April 1, I hold my breath that nobody moves into Mendon. So if anybody's selling houses, make sure their closing date is April 1st or April 2nd. But anyway, so that's one other thing there. We still don't, we could have retirees, things like that, that could impact our finances. And then the enrollment shifts as they come. And then I'm still thinking that transportation, it typically does go up in the House and Senate budget. So it might go up, but I don't expect it to go up by, $500,000 or anything like that. So those are the variables that we're still looking at that will help do it. But we do have to certify the budget next Monday. So what we've presented to you tonight is what's going to be certified next Monday night.
So we were asked to present, beyond FY24, some challenges, obstacles, threats that might be coming. We have ESSER and other pandemic funding will be ending soon. I'm sure you're aware of, end of timelines for that. That's been very helpful for us the last couple of years. You can see we are increasing the use of some of our one-time funds and some of our reserves. We know that that's something that isn't sustainable in the long term, but is helping us in the short term. As well. We are in our last year of our contractual obligations for all of our staffing, and we'll start negotiations next year. And we do know that, the trends right now in percentage increases and the impact of inflation are impacting some. Enrollment. I have a chart later. It's my visual that I like to show, so I can pull it up after if you want to see it. But basically, we have predictions of enrollment. In the last 10 years, we have had a reduction of 300 to 400 students, which has been typical in a lot of small towns like us. We hit that potential midpoint based off of the NESDEC review that they do every year last year, and that we're on upward trend where we will add 300 to 400 if we sustain their predictions in the next 10 years. So that's where we're starting to see at the elementary, the numbers creeping up at each grade level. And I think they will continue, particularly at the elementary level, will stay a little bit higher. And that will impact class size and need to bring back some of the teachers that and positions that have been cut over in the past.
And it's anticipated to be higher in Upton than it is in London.
Yeah. We talked about the strategic plan. Again, thank you. Mike's on our strategic planning committee that we're working on. So we'll be finishing that up for next year. Some of the big categories that we continue to talk about are enhanced real world program opportunities for our students, increased mental health supports, which I just talked about, and facility improvements, which we'll touch upon in a minute. And we also have the capital planning as a big part of what we're focused on this year. We're just going to be finishing up from what's it called, like an assessment, building assessment of all our buildings and facilities, where we'll get a report, and that's then going to drive our capital planning. We already have a preliminary list and a good sense of some of our needs, but we know athletic and recreation fields, facilities, there's a great need for us to improve those. We've known that. We started talking about it in 2015, and we've been talking about it for a while, but we've been working together with a local community group as well on some of the needs and identifying that. We have roof, HVAC replacements that Jay will touch upon. We talked about the age of Misco Hill. We have water and sewer. So I'm going to go to the next slide.
Water and
With
sewer.
more operational funding. Well, things that are failing, with water systems and sewer, so.
Yeah, so these are what we're calling some of the challenges as we go forward. Obviously, our priority is to provide appropriate services instructionally and social emotional, all those things that we've talked about for years and years, and eventually the numbers continue to increase and we're going to need to address them. It is going to be very difficult to sustain things over the years when we only get a 1% increase from the state. And in this case, this year, we're averaging, looks like around 1% as well. This year is unique. Generally, it's been, I want to say the town's increases have been in like the 4% range. Does that sound about right? We are hitting some of our reserve funds in this coming year. We do have contractual obligations coming up. Inflation isn't affecting us. We have staffing shortages, and part of that is competitive compensation. The facilities is a big issue. I said the buildings are 25 years old. We are going through water treatment issues because of the wonderful discovery of PFAS-6. I know that the town's got a similar issue with it as well. But those are fairly expensive. We have applied for grants to cover those costs, but we're working on that. But we've got enrollment, and then we understand that the towns too have increasing costs, increasing needs. I know, when I talk to the Upton town manager, he's telling me about trash cost issues. I'm sure you're experiencing the same thing. And you can only raise so much money within the limits of 2.5. So we've got this little conundrum where costs are going up, but the revenue isn't there to support it. As far as us on capital side, most of our systems have fairly complex HVAC systems that are controlled by a computer. The computer system at Nipmuc was put in 1997, and parts are not available for it. It's completely obsolete and is barely functioning. It's going to have to be replaced. The other two schools, Clough and Memorial, there were some systems that were put on top of a much older system a few years ago, but in reality, those systems are not working well and need to be replaced. The public water treatment stuff is just going in circles and circles. It's just, if you ever want to see a super complex water treatment system, I'll have you come over and you can see the system at Clough, because there are so many things involved with it. It's beyond what you can imagine. The roofs are all 25, 30 years old. We get leaks all the time. Those are going to need to be replaced. The insides of the buildings, the carpets at Nipmuc and Amisco were installed in 1997, and luckily students are very neat and never spill on them, so they're in perfect shape. So we've got issues like that. The grounds and athletic fields need a lot of work. When I list AC units, again, I'm talking about, like, for example, we had to replace the air conditioning for the auditorium at Nipmuc. And it was, I believe, over $100,000, and that was about 6 years ago. And then the furniture is the same thing. Some of the furniture in those buildings was bought in 1997 when the buildings were renovated, and the elementary schools opened in 2003. This is old stuff that needs to be replaced at some point. We are conducting an assessment of the schools right now through an architect and design firm so that we can develop a really thorough and professional capital plan. It should be complete sometime later this spring. I expect, and I think I've mentioned this over the last several years, the school district will be coming to the towns within the next year or two to address many of these long-term capital needs, but then the discussion also needs to begin on replacing Misco Hill School. It's a 65-year-old school that has a lot of problems. And if you want me to give you some examples, I can tell you, for example, the well is inside the boiler room in the building. The electrical service, and Mike, you would probably know this, is an old oil-filled transformer system. I think Mike actually saw it at one point.
Stuff put in that room.
Right.
Not at all.
You know, and the leach field, there's just a lot of things that it gets to a point where is it cost effective to continue to put money into a building that really doesn't have a lot of life left in it. So that's something that's not coming in the next year or two, but I think in the next 5 to 10 years, that discussion has to start taking place as well. So I'm just sort of planting the seed on that one. And I think we're at the end of our program. Unless anybody has questions that we didn't touch upon.
Or a comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear about the challenges, I think there's some that we have in common, both town and school. I think when you think about the DLS study that we just got back and, the focus on a multi-year financial strategic plan, that probably has to be done, I would recommend in conjunction with the school. So I
Right.
think there's gonna be a lot of information coming from the school we can use there. But given the dire update Jay just gave in the last 30 seconds, I think that effort has to start sooner than later. Like, let's close on this budget cycle. Let's formally kick something off to think about multi-year planning. And I'm off my soapbox. I'm done now.
Agreed. That's absolutely necessary. We've, COVID got in the way, but we actually were attempting to do something of a 5-year plan. Totally blown out of the water at this point. Then we have to start over again.
I think everybody does. That's what it did. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
Sure.
Appreciate everybody's time.
Feel free if you have questions to reach out to Jay or I. We're more than happy to follow up if you think of something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks. Moving on, I invite the 3 members of the Board of Health, if you all want to come up. I don't know if you guys want to slide down one.
Slide down one. Oh, yeah.
Oh, is Jack? Well, he's. Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't recognize him sitting at the desk with his hat off. Yeah, I really didn't. I've never seen him with his baseball cap.
Oh, not me.
I was wondering, who's that guy in the back, the tall guy? He's always been sitting down and.
Put this together.
Welcome.
Hello. Hello.
Thanks.
You're good. You're good. You're good.
Welcome, and thank you for all your efforts this year. Please take us through this.
All right, so for this Florida health budget, I tried to explain what the budget line items were, a little brief description and what we plan on to do with those funds. The current fiscal year for 2023 Florida health budget was $563,475. That's supposed to get us through the end of this fiscal year, June 30th. The budget contains 13 line items: salaries, newspaper ads, contract services, visiting nurse association, flu clinic, engineering, postage, supplies, Meetings, memberships and dues, trash disposal, trash collection, trash administration, and testing. So for salaries and wages, this line, budget line item is broken out to 2 6-month payments of $2,500 each for the animal inspector. And the remaining balance of $575 is for the board member stipends. We are not foreseeing any budget increase for this line item. Second line item for newspaper ads. Fiscal year for $300. We're looking to propose it for an increase of $400. Previously, the Board of Health has done town cleanup ads in both the town of Upton that include mosquito and tick blight, insert, and hazardous waste day ads. We're looking to also include legal notices and other BOH notifications throughout the year. The next one is contract services. This line item is used to pay contractor services for food establishment inspections, tobacco enforcement inspections. Again, not seeing any increase at all for this fiscal year, so leaving it at $10,000. Visiting Nurses Association fiscal year 23 is $70,500. We're looking to decrease it by $10,000 due to the fact that the extra $10,000 was for the COVID-19 pandemic, so we're not doing that for this fiscal year. Flu clinic, this is part of the BNA contract, so again, we're not seeing that for this budget line item. So we're looking to eliminate that, $300. Engineering fees, these are applied for all the disposal system construction permits, deep hole percolation permits, septic designs, additional septic plan reviews. We're looking to leave that alone as well for $20,000, and no increase in that budget line item.
That's a reimbursement line though, right? We pick that up from the people that are.
Yes, we collected on the other side.
Postage, I'm looking to increase it by $1,000. I'm looking to add a couple of every door direct mails for BOH information. Also, the cost of postage is going up to 63 cents per first class stamp. Certified mail sometimes we use is $90.99 per piece. Office supplies, I'm looking to increase this from $800 of this fiscal year to $2,300. I am looking for the additional every door direct mailers, the software used to create the online forms and the designs for the printing of brochures, postcards, or flyers for the every door direct mailers. Meetings, memberships, and dues. Fiscal year is $1,500. We are not seeing any changes in that, so leaving that alone for the fiscal year. I'm sorry.
It says a question on the engineering again, so you're not increasing that from 20,000?
No, we are.
Do I see an increase there?
No, they have duplicate lines that are.
Okay, if no, then fine. I just looking at the spreadsheet.
Let's see here. Next line item was trash disposal. Fiscal year in 2023 was $145,000. That includes the Wind Waste, who is the vendor that disposes of the trash that is collected by E.L. Harvey, and the Hazardous Waste Day, which we hold annually. We're looking to increase that by $3,000. Trash collector is E.L. Harvey. Fiscal year 2023 is $145,000. We are looking to increase that by $164,250. As we all know, the supply chain issues have gone up, wages have gone up with the waste collection industry. So we have no different than anybody else with trash costs across the state. Trash administration, we're looking to increase that by $250 for a total of $4,250. Testing is for the lake and landfill. Fiscal year is $20,000. We are looking to increase that by $9,000 for a total of $29,000. The reason for the extra cost is for additional lake testing at Lake Nipmuc. Talking with Dan Byer, Parks and Recreation, we're looking to do another 6 site areas possibly for E. coli and also phosphate and nitrate around the lake. So overall, total expenses for fiscal year 23 is $50,900. Fiscal year 24, we're looking to drop it by 7,400 to 43,500, I'm sorry. And trash disposal, collection, and trash administration. We are looking to, I'm sorry, trash disposal, we're looking to increase 2%. Trash collector, we're looking to increase 48%. And trash administration, looking to increase by 6%. And testing and lake landfill, looking to increase by 45%. So overall, Board of Health budget is an increase of 30% total.
So some of your numbers are different than your original submissions to the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
I do apologize. As I was going along.
That's okay. I mean, most of them are down, so I'll take it. I'm just gonna tweak that. Right. Go ahead. Ask your extra question.
The engineering, you said it's reimbursed?
We collect fees
Right,
and our goal is to set the fees
right.
to cover our expenses.
So
The only time we run into a problem
Yep.
is if that money at the end of the year gets taken away from Board of Health and those inspections haven't taken place yet,
Mhm.
that's when we run into a jam. But that
Right.
doesn't happen often.
Right, so there's a revenue side where that 20,000 is offset? So I mean, I see the 20,000 line item, but this is just expenses. And I'm assuming if I looked at a revenue sheet, I'd see some
Yeah, it
estimate
should be
for.
in fees, engineering fees and.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a revolving account. It's gonna drop in.
It's not a
general fund.
revolving account. We've talked about that.
Yeah, it's gonna dump into the general fund
Right.
or into free cash for next year, or, right?
Right, and that's why I said occasionally we can run into a problem. I think when you were chairman a few years back of the finance committee, we had to come before you because we were short,
Yeah.
even though we had the money within
Because we had too many
the Board of
inspections,
Health,
right?
we had to take it
Well,
somewhere else.
there's a delay between when they pay the fees and when the inspection happens.
Right, someone could
So
pull
if
a
it-
permit
if it-
and not have an
Right, but
inspection.
Fiscal
for 3
year,
Yeah, but hang on, it's not a revolving account. So if it's in the fiscal year and you spend 21,000, we have to transfer money into that account, even though the 21,000 came into the general fund. It's not a revolving account. It's
Right.
not gonna refill that. It's, we expect that, over years past, I'm sure that number was picked that, hey, generally, we're gonna be under 20 grand in engineering fees, leave a buffer. But in certain years, if we have a big subdivision or something that comes in, which like we've had, if there's an influx or people redoing septics,
Well, we do have an existing revolving account for Title V expenses
for Title V,
that exists for Title V.
for Title V,
Expenses,
but not for all the inspections. And,
not for all.
and again, that happens. If it straddles one fiscal year to the next, then we have to do something about it, moving the money or budgeting it
Right,
properly.
we could,
So
we
hang
could
on.
collect 21,000 one year and only spend 18 of it.
Right.
But at the end of the year, that 3,000 is gone.
And there is a recommendation from this recent Division of Local Services study about looking at all of the inspection fees and all of the fees the town charges to try to bring us in line with towns around us, because we're not. We may need to increase some of those, is what one of the
Yeah, I think you'll find a
recommendations.
good percentage of these engineering fees are related to Title V currently.
So wait a minute, so if we have a Title V revolving account.
Yeah.
What's the Title V revolving account for? Engineering fees?
It was established to support any kind of fees that would come in for engineering services or related services that pertain to Title V.
To prevent exactly what we're talking about here, so that when they come in, they don't get taken at the end of the fiscal year and put back in the general fund.
So what's the engineering line item for?
It would be elements that are not related to Title V. There are times when we might have engineering services or fees charged for a service that's not related to Title V. That would be what that would cover. Yeah.
Okay, so there was a time in which what we received for services net even to your budget. right? So we use the budget even and even. Should we still be anticipating that, or are you anticipating that your costs are going to be exceeding your revenues? Because right now, I only have $438,000 recognized for charges related to solid waste. And the contract is $650.
Okay, you're talking about trash now.
Yeah,
Okay, we changed subjects.
sorry.
That's all right. I just want to follow along. On the trash side, remember, it's a subscriber service. So we generate, or we attempt to generate and bring in from the subscribers all the money that goes out the other side.
Correct.
So-
All I guess I'm asking you is to say that, yes, you are anticipating bringing in $650,000, right, to even with the trash rate, based upon the
That's,
trash rate.
yes,
So I'm going to increase my revenue projection to 650 for that, so that it's even, that it nets, okay?
yes.
That's sort
It-
of.
it's a
our feeling with the
subscriber
engineering side.
service.
I just want to make sure we're balancing those things we get funded.
Because otherwise the budget is.
Just up and down.
So when we look
The only
at, so
thing
when
I
we
would-
look at this, look at this sheet on page 16, we have trash collection is 68% of the budget.
Mhm.
Those trash collection fees are paid by ratepayers. In other words,
All the
everybody in town.
subscribers.
Right. So,
They pay for the trash collection, which is E.L. Harvey. They pay for the trash disposal, which is Win Waste, used to be Wheeler Brader. All right, and what has happened is we're at the end of our 5-year contract. We write 3-year contracts with the option to renew for 2 individual years. 5 years ago, when we did this, we were in favorable times. Unfortunately, the last 5 years haven't been kind to anybody, and that's why we're seeing this exceptional increase. Hopefully, 5 years down the road, things are gonna even out and it won't be as big, as big a bump. I mean, right now, we're going from, paying about $50,500 for our, disposal of recyclables. That's now going to $110 a ton. It actually costs us more money to get rid of recycling than it does trash.
Yeah, in the previous contract, I will say Mendon fared very well. And unfortunately, we had negotiated a very good rate. And at the time, there was actually a flat rate that we chose to go with for recyclables.
But the increase in cost for getting rid of trash or recyclable, it's going to be reflected in bills that I would be paying twice a year.
that's the point.
That's the biggest thing I want to make sure is where we should have a net zero budget. I want to make sure the revenue side and the expense side matches, right?
Yeah.
Now, but my point, we should, that's why I asked the question. When I
Right.
hear reimbursable engineering fees, I'm like, well, I see a $20,000 line item, but on another tab somewhere, I should see a $20,000 revenue, because ideally they should net out, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So can I ask you a question about your calendar? Or just maybe this is too specific, just so in terms of collections for 23. What's the contract date? Is it fiscal year? Is it calendar year?
Yeah.
Fiscal year.
We go according to the town's fiscal
Okay,
year.
So the new rates, new contract, new anticipation is July 1 of 24, not now? Okay.
Lonnie, you had a question?
Yeah, sorry, yes, on the recycling. Is that something that, I know they came down and talked to us one time. They were talking about how a bunch of pieces of recycling were removed because they're just not cost effective anymore. Is that something to discuss at this point? Where are we at with recycling? What are they doing with it? Are they recycling it? I mean,
Well, recycling has changed dramatically.
right.
Because there are a lot of things that can't be recycled anymore because there's no place for them. So I think that's more than anything, that's what the increased cost is. That they have to now dispose of it in a different way, that they're not recyclable anymore, which is sad, because you think that you're doing, you think you're doing everything really properly, and come to find out, you can't use this and you can't use
But
that.
if the rate pays, what was the increase again? 100,000 something? Like that?
I'm sorry?
What was the increase on the recyclables?
Well, we were very fortunate. 5 years ago, we had the option of a variable rate for the recycling or a fixed rate. And the board decided to pay the extra 13,000 a year and go for the fixed rate. And we won.
Yeah.
That's not an option now. And what has happened is 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, and we were warned, we were very fortunate. We have a good relationship with people in the industry, long-term relationships, and we were warned that China changed their tolerances.
China.
When the stuff goes over to China, they take a core test. And if the core test has impurities that were 5%, they were still taking it. Well, 4, 5, 6 years ago, they dropped it to 1%. So this stuff was out in the ocean sitting on a ship because China didn't want it anymore. It had too many impurities in it. Recycling is only good if the recycling is done well. You have to do it right. It can't be contaminated.
So would you say the increase was $100,000 or something? So,
Well, no,
What's
the increase is, the recycling cost went from a fixed rate of 13,000 a year
yep,
to now, based on average tonnage over the last 3 or 4 years, we're gonna be paying $110 a ton to get rid of it,
So year one is basically a $50,000 cost.
instead of 13.
and then we're shipping it, so essentially then it gets shipped to China, right?
Well, China's not taking it anymore. A lot of times what happens is E.L. Harvey ends up warehousing it until they can get rid of it at a dollar value. There was a time we used to get money back for cardboard.
Right.
Every once in a while, we had Republic at the time. I've been on the board 9 years. We'd be getting a check for cardboard. We were sharing in the profits. The profits are gone.
It's not getting recycled and we don't even know where it's going. Right? And we just have to trust that essentially someday it might get recycled, or they're sorting out everything we have. Maybe this isn't a question for right now. Is this worth doing?
I'm sorry?
People can't get,
This is an existential question about recycling.
But
in
that's
general.
the point. It's not a financial question. Financially, it wouldn't be, but it's.
State of Massachusetts dictates we have to recycle.
The other question is about singles. So this is a move to single stream. Now, I've been a big proponent of this because I hate separate weeks. But I've always been told that it was way more expensive to do single stream. So how much of the increase of cost is the move to single stream?
E.L. Harvey has their own facility. So if they're not separating ours, they're separating somebody else's. So they already have the equipment and the manpower in place. I would have to ask, but it's probably not a big difference.
Okay, just every time I've asked, I've always been told it's way more expensive. That's why we don't do it. So, I mean, I'm happy to see it, but if that's built into the cost, I'm
Yeah,
interested in
they
that.
already have all
But-
this in place.
Yeah.
They have a big facility and staff that does this every day.
Yeah.
I
I feel like
find
we've
it
been behind
amazing.
the times by not doing it, but.
I just
Yeah.
find it amazing when I watch the truck come by. I watch it and I can't tell how they're putting the recyclables in a different place than the trash. It looks like it's all dumping into one place.
Phil does it so fast, I couldn't tell you either, but I know there's 2 compartments.
Totally, even in the kind of trucks that we're using right now, there's a back thing, they
Right.
have an area for the
Right.
recycling and an area for the trash.
I'm just saying, I watch it. It's tough to see it sometimes.
Because I watch it all the time, because he's right on my corner and I'm right there, so
I'm sure, I bet.
The other thing now that's going to happen is we're going to have our own, everyone's going to get a new container for recycling and a container for trash. And they're going to be the sidewinder trucks, so they're going to be dumped that way, sideways. So that will be, and
Is that going to be included in the cost everybody going to get? So they're going to deliver 2 containers to every ratepayer. One is every subscriber. Yes. Billy, you had a question? Billy?
Just wonder why, I know several years ago we started this, but after the dump closed, but I don't use the town trash. I get Berkeley picks up my trash. It's like $31 a month. And they don't spark anything. They separate themselves. You just throw the trash in the bag. They give you oversized barrel that you roll out to the sidewalk. And you don't hear a word from them. They take everything. I don't have to worry about getting bags, extra bag tags from the town or any of that crap. The town wouldn't need them to manage the accounting, which would be a great relief off the town. So I just don't know why we don't allow people to get their own trash picked up. If there isn't a great, disparity between the two. So why would we put this all on the town if you could do it yourself?
I think there is a real problem with that. And what the real problem is, you'll have like 10 different trucks going through the town all the time. And then you'll have people who won't sign up for anything and will put the trash in the woods. And that is a huge problem.
Well,
And wait, what?
They wouldn't have to use the town if they didn't want it anyways, if they're gonna throw the trash in the woods.
Well, but the price is a good price. We're paying less than you're paying.
Not much less.
Well, a fair amount less.
Bill, what,
And then
Bill,
it's recycling.
It's still like 130 a half year or something like that.
no, Bill,
Well-
what did you say you're paying a month? $31 a month, and how often do they come? And do they provide recycling?
They separate themselves.
They say.
So our understanding, we've done a little bit of research on some of the variables here for what, residents could potentially go with if they did not go, we didn't offer this program. And from what I understand, actually, the pricing that we're getting per month, and I think that particular vendor was 45 per month. Now, I don't know if they're doing something different with, commercial or possibly,
Well,
but
He has you have a dumpster, right?
But at my house, I use one of these barrels, and I'll tell you, there's probably like 7 houses on my street that use different trash carriers, that they don't even use the town. I mean, you'll see the barrels up on the road.
Well, that's this, you know what, this is a discussion, we're talking about the budget right now. I don't, no disrespect, but I hear what you're saying. So this increase, a 48% increase in trash collector, that's going to be reflected in the ratepayers, not in the budget.
Correct.
Okay. Did you have a?
Do you happen to know off the top of your head what the average increase in the bill is going to be per ratepayer? Just curious.
we probably estimated it was probably going to go to,
Right now, we currently have 1,857 subscribers. We do have a senior rate where they get half the bill, so standard rate would go up to $398 a year. Senior rate would be $483 a year. So their percentage increase would go up 36% with the new rates of E.L. Harvey.
Thank you. Just curious.
And I have called Berkowitz, Pratt, and Marchand. Got rates of, if we went with E.L. Harvey for next year, 36% increase. Looking at 85% increase if we went with trash haulers on our own.
and the industry is shrinking. There aren't many players anymore. A lot of them are not offering individual curbside
It's hard to get rid of waste too.
service, and the cost that they're incurring for the waste as well.
The contract has a 3% increase on the collection side every year. The tonnage rate goes up $2-3 a year. So we can, once we start year one, we can project ahead because everything's more constant. The only thing that could, cause a problem is recycling.
And with the rate increase of E.L. Harvey, it's $33 a month, broken out.
But we don't have a choice because the state of Massachusetts requires that we,
Recycle.
right.
Exactly.
So so it's not up to us to make a choice that, all right, well, it's too expensive, we're not going to recycle anymore. State says you can't do that.
Well, and technically, anybody that does business in Massachusetts, any trash hauler is supposed to provide recycling along with their trash collection, but.
So if they're
has to
giving
be
you, so if
policed
they're
by
providing somebody
else.
one barrel and say, just throw everything right in here, that's not conforming to the law.
As we understand it.
Okay.
Unless they separate it on their side.
Well, that's
Yeah.
a game.
So the understanding is when you give one barrel that you're throwing everything in there, that the person who's collecting it is actually separating it.
Right.
But it's not
However,
your, right.
If the recycling that's in that barrel gets contaminated, If the paper, the cardboard gets oil on it from salad dressing, it's junk. It's trash.
That's kind of what I was getting at a few minutes ago here. People don't know. I really like to, because I was totally baffled that I was doing it completely wrong. When that you know, there, you can't put pizza boxes, you can't.
Yeah.
put This, you pretty much gotta almost wash the stuff before you put it in there. And then there's only a few things you can, that they actually take. So by us just humming every piece of plastic or certain types of plastic you can't put in, so you gotta know that, it becomes this almost a kind of a real pain to do. I still do it, you know, it makes me feel great. But at the end of the
We
day.
know that everybody here at the table.
What is it like, if we could get better at it, are we gonna reduce that rate? Is our rate high? Are we seeing these increased rates because everybody's just humming styrofoam in there and everything else in their plastic bag?
Styrofoam is recyclable, but it's not in our program.
No, that's what I mean. But here I was throwing it in there all the time.
Yeah, but the way I'm reading it,
So you drove.
all of that really doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
It doesn't matter because even the stuff that we want to recycle, right now, people aren't, countries aren't taking it and they're warehousing it and.
Even if Mendon residents did it perfectly across the board,
Yeah.
everybody else in the surrounding towns that E.L. Harvey serves may not be, and it's going to impact our rate.
And I'm saying it doesn't matter if everybody did it perfect.
Right.
Right.
Because they got no place to put it.
So let's do it wrong and keep paying more.
Yeah, well, if we could do it, if we could find a way to pay less, but we
Well,
can't.
one thing that does get affected if you don't do it, right, if you do separate, what it does do, of course, it reduces your tonnage of actual trash, right? So that goes down, gets put into the recycle side. Now, I do know the E.L. Harvey, they work against the commodities market in terms of what commodities charges. So right now, we get monthly bills with regard to, from Wheelabrator on our tonnage that we dispose of on a monthly basis for trash. And what would be coming with this new program, this was the way we were going to go, would be that we'd also see a bill, periodic bill, for the tonnage rate for recycles. Now, currently, right now, they're using 110 per ton as a number, but that could possibly get adjusted depending on how the market flows. So if the market improves, the tonnage rate could improve. If not, then it could, so that's not a top, that's not a flat rate across the board for the entire contract.
Because the state is actually doing a lot of research on how to do certain things with certain kinds of products. I think it's actually federal, that how do we get rid of these things conscientiously and use them again and do that sort of thing. So, there's, and I did see a program, I watched a program the other night, I think it was on PBS, where they were letting them recycle the pizza boxes. So,
Well, they could be composted.
yeah, so they said you could do that, even if it had a tiny little bit of oil on it.
I love to continue existentially arguing the merits of recycling, but back to the budget piece.
Right.
The one variable that could change what was presented as far as the ratepayer costs were to go would be if, now looking at these new numbers and putting out what the cost will be for this contract moving forward, will people pull out of the program? So currently, right now, we do have about 400 households that do not participate. So we have about 20% that do not. We have about 80% participation, which is pretty good. But could this number cause people to rethink participating in the program? We still feel, based on what we've seen so far, price-wise, it's still more price-friendly to do this, but people may,
What does it mean for people who are gonna get these trash barrels, the ones that you have, you just can't use them anymore? You gotta get rid of them?
well, as I understand it, they're providing containers.
Right.
As part of the program. However, right now, the Board of Health is structured that we allow, we do it kind of based on gallons at curbside.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we phrase it is 4 30-gallon bags/barrels. So the way E.L. Harvey looks at it is they look at it as a total number of gallons. So they may be providing a cart, say a 65-gallon cart, but an individual homeowner could still put out another cart or barrel with that, so long as they stayed within that framework of what we're saying is allowed at curbside under the program. E.L. Harvey will take it. When they go beyond that number, beyond, say, the 120, 125 roughly, because it's hard to find a barrel that's exactly, meets that exact gallon, because I have 265, for example, so I have a total of 130. But that's fine as far as the El Harvey is concerned, right? If I were to put out something beyond those 265s, they see that as going outside the program, and their expectation will be they'll see a sticker on that bag or barrel. And that's another,
Don't the trucks that use those specific barrels, though, can't those only grab those specific barrels?
no, they can actually grab other barrels where those arms work.
Yeah,
They
okay.
can actually tip up barrels that are not your typical flip.
That was part of my question, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're trying to make the system as automated as possible. I mean, it makes sense. They can do the route faster, less workman's comp claims, less chance of an accident with a driver hopping out of a truck while it's still rolling. So, I mean, it all makes sense. But we're gonna try to stay as close as we can to the same parameters that we have, even though we're going from a system that is partially automated to a system that they want to make probably 95% automated. Because we're still gonna be allowed to, use trash bags. People are still gonna be able to use the sticker program if they do their spring cleaning or whatever, and they have extra trash. So not much is gonna change. It's just that we're jumping into a new 5-year period, and we're gonna feel it.
I will say from the point of disclosure, the board has been talking about an increase in that sticker program per bag. Currently, it's $2 a bag. It's been $2 a bag forever. And there's
You must have had 1 million stickers done how many years ago? And this, they must almost be out by now, right?
actually, we have quite a few stickers left in the various departments. But on average, I think we got some numbers the last few years. It's been taking in an average of $5,000-6,000 maybe a year in the sticker money. Currently, that's, not associated with any kind of funding support for the program, but it's still revenue that comes in.
Yeah.
So whether or not we make that move to increase that's a possibility.
Quick question to the 80/20, Tom, that you laid out there.
Yeah.
You're looking at it, say, what if we lose some of the 80, right? Is the other direction a possibility? If you've priced these things out, would your current prices, if people knew or more
They're
informed,
better, yeah.
that they might actually jump in and you might up your 80% to something higher?
You would think that they would.
If,
Yeah.
if your pricing is such that you think it's better than the competition, what do we do to get the word out? Because that'll drive down costs for all the participants, right?
Well, that's actually also been a discussion we've been having about putting out some sort of a notification to the residential base, kind of formulating some sort of an informational letter explaining what's to come and the benefits of possibly those who may not be participating in the program. Maybe this is an opportunity, if they don't already know, that maybe they're missing out on something they didn't realize they were missing out on.
That'd be great if you could do that.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Well, that's why Jack has put in the budget.
This is fantastic.
Good job. The every door mailers and the software so that he can produce all that stuff. He
Right.
has the skill, he just needs the tool. So that's why he's put that in the budget.
I personally think that the single stream piece is something that people should know about. If I wasn't lazy, I would have moved over to Berkowitz because that just drives me insane. So that was the only thing that, like, seeing this is great, and I'm like, awesome. This would be great for other people.
So we'll sign you up for 2 subscribers.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, see, we just went over
Not
the
having,
80%.
not having single stream recycling, because I used to have Berkowitz when I was at Northbridge. And I loved it. It was a great service. They do a great job. And based off of that pricing, it's very competitive. And now this offers you the exact same thing that Berkowitz offers you. So people who are not on the town, this can reduce the amount of trucks. Like, there's lots of benefits to sticking with this.
Correct.
If you're already with Berkowitz, switching, it may not make any sense. You're just getting the same service. But people who are weighing the options, at least you can say, well, at least it's part of, supporting what the town is doing and less traffic and all that good stuff.
It's 1 truck, 1 driver, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
You can't beat that.
And you do know you're getting recycling, and because there, in my opinion, for what it's worth, you put all your trash in one container, that they're not gonna.
That person doesn't roll into my decision making, but that's fine.
That doesn't, there's no, you're not, they're not recycling. I don't care what it says he's doing.
I know we're running behind. Does anybody else have any questions for us?
No, thank you.
I did want to mention one element, if I could. The boards have discussions on this, and I know departments have been made aware of some conversation that had taken place with regard to trash pickup disposal, with regard to residential versus municipality. So in discussions that we've had, this collection disposal program is supported by the residents, but it also includes services that are provided to the municipality. And from our perspective, we feel that possibly there's an element of financial support that could possibly come, or maybe should come, from the municipality side versus having the subscribers include that, have that included in their bill. Not that it's a lot, but it's in terms of what we feel would be fair. We think that that cost element should probably be picked up from another avenue.
You're saying a portion of the administrative costs?
No,
for
the
bringing it to
dumpsters, the dumpsters that go to each department, like the senior citizen has a
Really
dumpster.
roundabout way to say that, but yes, okay.
Oh.
So the dumpster costs at the buildings is what you're talking
Correct.
about?
Right, you and I had a discussion probably 5 years ago about that.
Okay. So what is the cost?
Roughly, we're probably looking at around $15,000 for all the departments, or for whatever all the departments contribute into the municipal.
So instead of building it into the ratepayer cost, we built into the tax side, so everybody, including the ones that aren't
Correct.
partaking, aren't ratepayers, are also going to pay in that part of it because.
Yes, because everybody in town
Taxes.
shares
Yeah.
in the municipality
Right.
element,
Right.
so, yes.
And there are some efficiencies that could be built in to lower that. Currently, the senior center has an 8-yard dumpster. They probably, most likely, I'm really sure, don't need an 8-yard dumpster. The dumpsters that are at the Parks Department are only picked up seasonally. So by adding some locks and fine tuning the season that they're supposed to be picked up, we could create some efficiencies that will save everybody money.
Right. I think this is definitely something that we could look at in our new facilities budget that we are creating. And then we have at least a point person to manage that piece of it rather than
Very,
sort of just existing, right? That would be easier.
Yeah, we're most likely, after the start of the contract, going to try to reach out to the individual departments and at least create some efficiencies with the size of the dumpster and how often it's picked up, but no dollars and cents at this time. We
Okay.
sort of look at the dollars and cents as something on the accounting side that would happen in the background.
Okay.
We're not going to give someone a bill unless they want.
So I just want to say, Jack, considering this is your first year, I feel like you're really doing us all really proud.
too.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, seriously.
job.
Beach.
I mean, this is, I can't wait to see what you do in the rest of your role in inspectional services. This is great, and I really appreciate it. No, you did a great job.
Fine.
And honestly, this is a standard that I wish all departments were working towards, or, I mean, it's really, I think everybody here is impressed by this, so good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Invite the Council on Aging to come on up.
We just had that conversation with my daughter.
Yeah, that's
2 weeks later, I found this going through my mother's stuff. I had forgotten all about
Oh,
that.
no,
You
I
said
didn't. I
something
remember
very wrong.
watching it.
I forgot all about it.
That
And
is
then,
so
like I
bad.
said, 2 weeks later, she said, can you imagine that?
Well,
I mean,
I remember. Remember the
yeah.
knuckle? Remember all the knucklehead, the clowns were hanging out there, right?
I mean, oh, yes, yes, 79.
What's up?
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
All right.
Here it is.
Before Amy starts, I would like to thank Elena for attending all of our meetings, Council on Aging meetings and the Friends meeting.
All right.
We're so glad that we have the liaison from the
I just-
selected second character. I want to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They're speculators.
That's a tough act to follow. But I would like to say that, we're like all of us, we're getting back on our feet after the pandemic. We lost the participation in-house of our seniors during the pandemic, 2 years. We're steadily increasing our numbers. I think next year, by 2023, by the end of 2023, calendar year, we'll be back on track with our former numbers. However, that said, our budget, we're put in for level funding this year. We did not make any increases whatsoever. We have given back over the last 3 years, we gave back like $34,000 in unspent expense item money, and also some salary line items. So I think this year, Kim has made the adjustments to our salaries as it was necessary for the cost of living and whatnot.
Until next week.
Why don't we, Amy, pause for 1 second?
I'm sorry, we just, yeah,
We're
we're,
debating whether or not we move everything basically after budget to next week.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have people waiting if we're going
yeah, just because, right, that's just because, just give us just 2 minutes to talk about this, because, well, everybody who's here for the budget, we're gonna finish going through the budget tonight, but we have a few items, including ATM warrant review, which the warrant's gonna close, but I'm thinking we can move these.
If we're going to meet next week.
Yeah.
We could do it next week, right? Or pick another
Does
day.
anybody have
There's a
an
lot of people
objection to
waiting for
that?
warrant articles, and I don't think anybody wants to wait. And then executive session, we can punt on that too.
We were just having the same conversation over here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. So just anybody who's out here, anybody who's here for the warrant review, we're gonna actually schedule an unscheduled meeting for a week from now. So if you're here about warrant articles, we're gonna talk about that next week at our meeting next week.
The warrant articles will be next week.
Yes.
What about executive session?
Right. so
Same
I
thing.
can move- I can move mine. What about yours?
Yeah,
Well, if there's something that's critical,
that's the executive session. Executive session, right.
all right, well, then if it's critical, we'll,
Well, I can move mine.
okay.
It won't-
Yeah, right, that's what I just know that there's 40 articles on the ATM warrant.
Right.
And I didn't see us going through 40 articles tonight and giving it the attention it needs for the first run.
Sure. One other question, though. The other item is that Lake Task Force.
Oh, yeah, of course. No,
Do you want to do that this week? It'll only take a minute.
right, yeah.
I just know
absolutely.
Mr. Phipps is probably here for that, right? Oh. Oh, okay. No, all right. All right. Sorry.
So it's everything but warrant and
I just thought you were waiting for that.
14. 13.
Yeah.
We'll make it to 14 and stop.
Well, yeah, there's just,
We're basically punting on the warrant. is what we're
yeah,
punting
pretty
on.
much. The warrant and one of the executive sessions.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and we'll still do the,
That works.
Yeah.
Can't do the, obviously, you can't do 16 without doing
right,
15, right?
right, but this,
I'm just
but
gonna text
Lonnie's,
council and Tell them. where-
yeah, okay.
Is council needed for one of the executive sessions?
I don't have counsel for that one. Mine is labor council.
Did you have a chance to catch up with council? Okay.
Everybody clear?
All right, I'm sorry. No.
Okay.
Thanks.
So
Sorry,
just,
Amy.
that's okay. Just want to say, we are certainly getting back on our feet. I'm very proud of our board, our staff, and our volunteers for helping us get there, because what we do, I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to read any of the figures that I've sent your way on the services that we've provided this past year. And then just earlier tonight, I sent out some of our outreach service information.
I saw that email, yeah.
Because last year, FinCom and the Select Board supported our ask for more hours for outreach. And it just, when I was, perusing all my numbers, I was just, wow, that's the numbers that we've come up with in terms of fuel assistance applications this year, SNAP food stamps applications this year. I mean, these applications all initially it takes an hour, and then oftentimes the client's coming back 1 or 2 times with further information. It's like doing your income tax return, but we're doing it, for you, with you, helping to submit you. Now we have to scan everything and send it over that way, and that takes time too. And so this is a, small office staff. So we really appreciate the COA and myself that you did approve
Extra hours.
the extra hours. It's certainly, money well spent. But again, where we have given money back the last 3 years, we really didn't feel that, and we got those hours that we so sorely needed. We didn't feel that we should be, pushing for anything else. We're a very frugal institution, and we live within our means. And just, I don't know if you have any questions about where our money goes, but it's well spent,
I'm good. I have a question on your outreach.
Yes.
The summary that you provided, the duplicated versus unduplicated.
Yes.
Is this all fiscal year 2023 or?
That's so far.
Yeah, okay.
That's so far. Let me just see. So which one I gave you?
The
Yeah,
town
so-
census is 28%.
Yeah, so
60
that-
and over. That's climbing, that's going up.
So yes, it is climbing. So that's from July 1st to current.
Cool.
To current.
So the unduplicated is it, so the duplicated is it the same person visiting multiple times in this
Exactly.
year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and unduplicated. So far, we're up to 157, where I think last year we had, but see, the thing is, the state wants us to report on a fiscal year. When we report for the annual, our annual report here, it's a calendar year. So I gotta tell you, it
Gets
really,
confusing. Yeah.
I did my state report before, we had our numbers for our calendar year, and they just don't jive.
Right.
They don't jive. But yeah, if you can see the many different types of assistance we offer people. So if anybody has, older parents that they've had to assist, this is essentially the type of assistance that you might give your own parents. So it's a very vital support. No, that being said, that is outreach. The senior center itself provides different kinds of assistance, educational assistance. We had Jean Berthold down last week, and people just were blown away. It was the third, because of the weather, it was the third date we've chosen for her. People were blown away by her program on tax exemptions. So coming to find out, and it was, something we could offer in mass, or one-on-one. If somebody was a little bit shy and wanted to discuss their personal situation, we gave them her, her phone number to contact directly. So we offer educational programs, nutritional programs. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I'm very proud of everybody at the facility. But the big thing that we have to say is the senior population is growing. It's growing from last year to this year. We're up about 15%. That said, that increase, the seniors are about 28% of Mendon's population, and it's going to just continue to grow. I was digging out statistics the other day from the Census Bureau. We can't stop it. It's got to keep happening. And we need to address it and continue doing what we're doing and then some. So I know we are going to be coming back to talk about getting some support for, our facility since the pandemic, we can't use the space like we used to. We have to be safe. For example, exercise can't be done in a tiny 8x10 room anymore. It has to be done in our open space. And we are constantly breaking down, putting up. And this is no exaggeration. It's a very busy day doing that. But in order to be safe with everyone so that people aren't on top of each other and things like that.
And the building is 33 years old.
33 years old.
It was built for a much smaller population that was using the facilities. And sadly, we have had to turn people away for some of our events because of the limitations of space.
Do you keep track of that?
Yes.
We do. We have waiting lists, and we do try to provide as much socialization as we can, especially for the fun events, But we are running into a wall with that.
As Daniel was saying, as we looked, I think you started like in 2018 is when you started thinking about the expansion.
Right before the pandemic.
So the need has now gotten back to pre-pandemic.
Yes.
And the needs are even more. And not only just the senior center, but dealing with all the other services we do.
Yes.
for the rest of the population.
For the emergency shelter. The community use of the building is starting to pick up. It's about half of what it had been pre-pandemic, but it's growing more and more. So, and we're very, happy to share it with other entities.
Oh, yeah.
The Lions Club, the Scouts, all sorts of Scouts, the Historical
Blue Panther.
Society.
Blue Panther is very-
We want it to be a community building. You really do.
Mhm.
So, we love to have the scouts in and stuff. It's great.
Are we seeing the increase in utilization from, are more older residents moving to town, or is it just the,
The aging
natural
process.
aging of the?
No, it's more and more moving to town. We have a lot that are moving in with their children. I know one of our volunteers came and they built a home here. They're living with their children. I'm not quite, not quite sure if it's an in-law situation on
Yeah.
whose part, but yes, no, there are people moving here. There are people that are moving here from out of state. They've researched Massachusetts, they've researched Mendon, and this is where they're flocking to. So it's both. It's actually both.
The new addition from the Cape.
Yes, yes. One of our van drivers from Connecticut, so it's both situations, so.
Cape to here. They moved from the Cape up to here?
But we're not asking for anything right now.
Actually, there's two from the Cape that are up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they need to get some.
One's a new senior worker. We're in charge of the senior work program, which we recruit, train, and then help to place seniors in other departments that I know the building department has used them, the treasurer's department has used them, the clerk's office has used them. It's been a long time since the police department has used them, and I've tried, the schools have used them, but it's going to be a while, I think, before the schools, integrate that program back in. But I know when they had the help several years consistently, they were very appreciative for it. So that's something else we're in charge of as well. So, but I can't do a lot more recruiting until we have a lot more positions or work to offer them. So, but, again, I don't know if you have any other questions about.
And have they met Phil?
No, I'm sorry, this is Phil Sipley. He's the newest board member.
I think I met you guys when you approved me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, good. Just checking.
So Phil is going to be spearheading our expansion project. It's in his forte, and
Well, I guess my ask here is just as much help from you, the board and financial committee, to guide us through this maze. We have a need and you're all welcome to visit. A lot of you been there. We have certain sets, place restrictions, we just can't service the people that need it. And 20% of the population, me being one, by the way. And quite frankly, I lived down the street from that building for 40 years. I had no idea what they provided. And I get the little newsletter. I'm amazed at what these folks do. I've only been engaged with them about 5 or 6 months now. But they desperately need this, some sort of facility. So I'm going to look for your guidance. How do we get from here to there within their lifetime?
Yeah.
And I literally mean within their lifetime.
Got to get that 28% of the population to show up and vote.
Yeah.
And that's how we get it.
I think we probably could do that.
Yeah.
And I also have the other side. I've got the swing voters, which are my daughter and her kids and her families. If you'd like to get some support,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to recruit both sides.
My only feedback is that if you capture enough data showing an unmet need, that helps make the case.
Yeah. I think we have the data. Amy has more than enough data
Yeah,
for that.
sounds like it.
And I think.
I keep track of the numbers very closely.
Before, but we'll get into that.
Mhm.
And Lonnie, you're aware of it, Lonnie.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well,
I mean,
thank
the
you all.
positioning the facility of ways that people outside of, the older generation could utilize it, but that's where you're going to get more support.
Right, well, we have the Girl Scouts using it
They
now.
do utilize
Is it the
now.
Lions that come in?
I know they do. I don't know how many people know that. I'm not aware of
Okay.
like all of those uses specifically, so I question,
You know what,
We know we have to
Yeah.
get that message out.
yeah.
It's like
We know that.
Well, and especially, coming back from the pandemic, we were very cautious about allowing too many people in the facility because.
The elderly.
Yeah, no,
have
I get all, it's
issues.
just in general, a comment about, when we start to communicate plans about this,
Yep.
it will probably be more well-received from the broader community of knowing how the facility can be used by the general population,
Sure.
right? While there's a focus on those, the seniors in the old generation. It's not like that's the only purpose of it, right? Or the only.
We are the emergency
Yeah, the Red
facility.
Cross Emergency Facility
We're
for.
the only one in town because we've got the kitchen and we've got beds,
Yeah.
things like
Well,
that.
I think
cots.
it's earmarked for seniors, so.
Any of the board members have any other questions or comments for the?
Thank you for your.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, nobody has their hand up at home.
Thanks, folks.
Thank
Look
you
forward to
all.
working with you.
All right,
Yes,
thank you.
likewise. Thank you.
The last one.
We already do highway?
There's two more.
Yeah, I know.
We already do highway? Oh, no.
No, we didn't.
We just did. the-
Kim is gonna, yeah, they were, right. I asked the library board, the director, please come up.
Hungry.
So am I. Starving. We gotta do something.
Send it again.
We should, yeah, just like a Spicoli moment, you know what I mean? Yeah, right. That's true.
An hour ago, like, phone. you can
Yeah.
bring me food. It's all right.
There you go.
Oh,
Yeah,
mine
right?
too.
Pulling close. Good to see you.
Mine goes right. Go to bed, yeah. It's ready. Here.
Yeah. Andrew, how are you? Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for waiting. I know it's budget season and
Yeah,
it's
no,
a
no,
busy.
It's fine. So I just want to double check before I begin. Did anybody need a copy of the budget proposal?
Yes.
Anybody?
Yeah, I would be happy to have a hard copy. It's easier for
I've
me
got
to
three
look at
more,
it.
so-
Okay, all right. We can share. Yeah, we'll share.
Need one.
Make some copies.
Oh, if you want to share, yeah, if you don't mind.
We can chat, don't worry.
Okay. I'd like to thank you all for meeting with us tonight to discuss the FY '24 budget proposal for the Taft Public Library. I'm very pleased to relate that the library continues to be a very busy place. The library saw strong attendance over the past year, an increase. In fact, in the summer, our busiest time, attendance increased by 22% over summer '21. Circulation of books and other materials for our patrons increased by 28% in 2022. We're also happy to note that over the past year, the library put together an online survey and met with community members, including parents, school children, and library personnel, in a series of focus groups and public forums to collect feedback on what the community likes about the library, what they see as our challenges in the next 5 years, as well as what the opportunities for growth might be. All of it culminated in the creation of a 5-year strategic plan, which is now available to view on our website. Also want to extend a thank you to all of you. It's been very good to have a representative from the select board attending monthly trustees meetings. It's opened up lines of communication, so I just wanted to thank Elena for being a part of that. That's been good. Obviously, the work doesn't end, so with that in mind, let me turn to the budget proposal for FY '24. The current adjusted library budget for FY '23 is $290,772. The library is requesting $338,149 in FY '24, which represents a 14% increase over the previous year. This increase includes additional work hours for library assistants and the children's librarian to enable the library to be open an additional 12 hours per week at minimum. It also then includes increases to certain budget lines. I'm going to go through these as quickly as possible. And as I move through this, just to keep in mind, last year when we presented our budget, we didn't have any increases to the operations lines outside of the books line. So everything was relatively level funded. It's made it difficult for us to do that now because we have to meet a standard by the state. I'll go into that eventually. So the increases include a $2,000 increase to the contracted services line. 67% of that line is currently covers the cost of 3 services. CWMR's regional membership fees, the Otis elevator service contract, and monthly janitorial fees. All of those I anticipate going up in this year. So that leaves about 30% to cover copier maintenance, copier printer maintenance contract, contract and maintenance, alarm company fees, water delivery, internet service, and general computer maintenance. We would be looking at a 10.6% increase to the lights line of $1,500. We are entirely electric at the library, in case anybody did not know that. So that covers both lights and HVAC. Previous winter's monthly electrical bills were between $1,000 and $1,200. This winter, they've run between $2,200 and $2,700 a month. So it's quite a significant increase. We'd be looking at a 14% increase to the supplies line. That would be $1,500 additional. 110% of this line was spent in FY22. 1,006 in the red, which we pulled from other budget lines. That includes the budget, supplies line typically covers office supplies, janitorial supplies, book and media processing supplies, and craft supplies, all of which have increased. In the building maintenance line, we're looking for a $2,500 increase. There were no increases to this line requested in over 5 years. Yet the library spent $2,876 in excess of it in FY22. That includes HVAC maintenance, gutter cleaning, carpet cleaning, window cleaning, fire extinguisher maintenance, landscaping, and so forth. Because the budget lines go up, the books line has to go up because we need to meet 19%, or that is to say 19% of our budget needs to be spent on books and media. That's a requirement of the state. So when the other lines go up, the books line goes up. The increase to the books line would be in the amount of $11,400. In programming has grown literally within the last 5 years. I think our programming, speaks for itself just in terms of what we offer with a part-time children's librarian, but programming costs. Typically performers in the last 3 to 4 years, the costs for a single performer have gone up on average $200 to $250. The library exceeded its programming budget by $4,400 in FY21 and $3,500 in FY22. The budget covers performers and speakers, summer reading activities and incentives, presenters, craft events, materials for story times, and adult activities. There are modest increases in this budget for postage, $110 increase because the box fee, our PO box fee, has increased to $212. The $140 is obviously not adequate. So we've asked that be increased to $110 to $250. Meetings and dues. My staff does not do, outside of free workshops that they have the time for, and they rarely have the time for it. They do not do professional development. As a matter of fact, we have, the fees for American Library Association, New England Library Association, and Digital Commonwealth amounted to nearly $700, in FY22. That left us a little over $200 for 7 staff to attend conferences, workshops, or seminars during the year. That it just doesn't cut it based on the cost for those sorts of development opportunities. This line has not been increased in over 10 years. We're requesting an additional $800 for this account. So that line, we're requesting $1,725. Staff salaries. Of all the libraries in the Blackstone Valley, No library has a staffing configuration like that of the Taft and Mendon. One full-time employee with 6 part-time staff at 19 hours per week or under. No library has less than 1 full-time employee in the children's area. Actually, Dave, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to pass a set of charts down. You'll have to share between you.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind distributing these, okay? And if you pass them over here. And then you'll wind up having to share, but.
Let me reorient.
Yeah, there's another one. So considering the combined hours all staff work in a 30-hour work week at the library, and that number is 112 hours, that translates into 2.8 full-time equivalent employees based on a 40-hour work week. That is to say, myself and 6 staff are 2.8 full-time employees. Keep in mind too that the library has 2 public service desks, which require staffing for the 30 hours per week the library is open. And that equates to very little time for staff to perform the many additional tasks necessary for providing optimal service. On those charts, the chart that says staff number, professional, and total, obviously on the left-hand side, you'll see that, you know, it goes up 2, 4, 6, and so forth. These are all libraries that are population 5,000 to 10,000 in the state. And their staffing makeup, you need to look very far down to the left to see where Mendon is. We are 4th from the bottom. In the next chart, which is salary expenditures from all sources, for libraries population of 5,000 to 10,000. Once again, you need to look far down the map to the 6th entry for Mendon to see where we stand in terms of comparison to other libraries of similar size, in communities of similar size. As I said, it's 2.8 full-time employees total at the library, including a children's librarian who works 19 hours per week. Despite the fact that she works 19 hours per week, she plans and administers an impressive schedule of children's programs. I can't tell you, I would say 90% of the time programs that she runs, particularly the story times, are maxed out every week. We have wait lists. Plenty of people can't get into the programs because of the wait lists. She works with Beginning Bridges, and they do play groups. Those are always maxed out. Aside from her doing those programs, she's responsible for planning and implementing most of the adult programs. She conducts community outreach. She updates our social media. She generates program publicity. She assists in addressing technology needs. She orders supplies, and she works the public services desk. When the director is away, she acts in his stead. So I have all the faith in the world in our children's librarian. I think she's amazing. But if I were ever out for any length of time, God forbid, we're asking a 19-hour-a-week employee to be the administrator of a library open 30 hours per week. The numbers just don't add up. It's an incredible amount of responsibility for a part-time employee. There's no fail-safe. There's no safeguard there. Our request is for an additional 11 hours for the children's librarian, thus making her a full-time employee, and 9 additional hours for the library assistants. The increase to the budget would be $24,567. That would allow us to be open 12 additional hours, perhaps as many as 16 additional hours, depending upon my staff schedules and their availability. In closing, I just want to mention a couple of things. as I mentioned, we've gone into the red on certain lines within the last year. I want to stress that we've stayed within our budget in FY '22. In fact, we've always stayed within our budget year in and year out. And there are a number of years in which money has come back to the town. I do not have the number on that, but I can certainly get it. Outside, the other thing I wanted to mention is obviously last year, outside of standard cost of living increases to staff salaries into the books line for FY '23. The library did not seek increases to any of the other operational lines in FY '23. I should also mention that, and I understand that there are departments and they address different populations. The library, to my knowledge, outside of parks, is the one of the departments that offers programs to all age levels, from birth through to seniors. A point I would like to make is that this fiscal year, the library is only $264 above the municipal appropriation requirement as required by the state. We are in very real danger of falling below the MAR and needing to apply for a waiver going forward. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. We have been in waiver territory before. It took us a long time to get out of waiver territory. I don't want us going back there.
The budget you propose would not put us in that waiver category, though. Is that correct?
Oh, no, yeah, we would be clear of the waiver category, absolutely.
You just mentioned the number was 24,000 and change for that increase.
Right.
It shows 21. I'm assuming that is the rest insurance.
No, I pulled 22,256 from the salary lines as I have 8571 for the 9 hours and 1365 for the 11 hours for the children's librarian. So we're within a couple.
Oh, it's all right. So then.
Yeah, we're within 1,000 or so for whatever reason. But the rest is benefits.
Okay. And that,
Right, but and I should mention that in this proposal, not understanding that benefits don't need to be calculated into there. They were calculated in, so you can pull 20,000 off of that final figure of 358,149. So it'd make it 338,149.
Already been adjusted.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. That way it looks that way in here.
The other thing I should mention is if that number comes down, that means the books line can come down.
Right.
So you can peel off 4,000 to 4,500 and it would be 334, 149.
Okay.
Somewhere along those lines.
So I've been looking at this. Brendan's been looking at this the last couple of days. I think everyone has heard me say this ad nauseum now for the last 5 years, right? We have a lot of requests that come in. This one has come in every single year that I have been here. We only have $143,000 worth of department requests this year. Requests. We have tons of drivers. Put that aside.
Yep.
Knowing that this is on the chopping block, we tried to get creative again. Right, so I had Eric look a day ago, the town accountant, to see, you do have a library state aid account that has $79,000 in it that you can use.
I spoke with Brendan about
Right.
this earlier.
So these guys haven't even started to talk about this yet because this has just happened in the last couple of days.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking that as we're debating what stays and what goes, that maybe we can find some sort of agreement about half funding, funding from the salary from there and us picking up the benefit place, or like something like a 2-year agreement to use that funding to help get this position for 2 years and then get it in, and then 2 years from now, reevaluate, right? Something like that. I mean, the problem as every year, as you know, is there's nothing else in here for us to cut. So if we don't get creative about this, I don't know how we get there, right? We looked at like increasing revenues on what we've tried, all different things. The other thing I would tell you, and I have to say it just as we don't create positions for individual employees, right? So I'm not saying anything about the existing employee. I'm just saying this is a need that the library has for another full-time position. Happens to be the children's librarian position. But my next question is, sounds like you're really saying it might actually be classified a little bit higher than that potentially based on what your needs are. And I want you to keep that in mind when you're talking about really adding a backup position to the director.
Mhm.
Don't minimize it. right? If there's a piece in there that recognizes the responsibility and the managerial, and it takes on additional responsibilities, I want to know that as we're adding it, because it helps justify adding it, right? So just say those pieces.
Just to pull from your first point. State aid is finite. It's not guaranteed we'll get it every year, and it's not guaranteed we get the same amount every year.
Right.
If you were to use a certain amount for state aid, from state aid, that could take 4 to 5 years to build back up again.
I know, that's why I'm
And
saying
at the
two.
same time, there would need to be assurances that for what,
So,
state aid shouldn't be used as a Band-Aid.
so
Totally agree with
For,
you.
for
I
a
would consider it a
position
bridge.
that should be fine.
I totally agree with you, but I just also think realistically, we've been saying this, in terms of revenue really coming online at all, the only changes potentially in revenue that we're going to see in the next couple of years are only really around cannabis potentially coming in, right? Or potentially, and their needs are only going to grow in these other departments. If you don't take a swing here at some point and try to get it in, you might miss your window,
But the,
right?
but the swing involves using state aid.
So I just want to back up for a second because we're we're solutioning, I think, which is fine. But just add a question about what is the state aid used for?
State aid, I talked to Brendan about this today, it can be used, it's wide ranging. You can use it for any number. You could use it for staffing. As a matter of fact, when we opened for Mondays recently, we used state aid to support a position at the downstairs desk for those 5 weeks. So yes, you can use it for staffing. You could use it for materials. You could use it for, as far as I understand it, supply purchases, whatever it might be. There's not a lot that necessarily limits it.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no,
Well,
Go
I'm just
for
gonna,
it.
I looked at the 11.4 increase, and that's, you stated it's a 20% requirement from the state.
Yeah.
I would ask the question, from your perspective, is that, do you need to spend $11,000 in new materials? Or is that just a requirement from the state and you're gonna find a way to do it?
Well, like I said, anytime the budget goes up.
No, but that's, I understand that. That's sort of a, I have to, not, what are we missing in our books and videos and things that you would go, you'd want to go spend $11,000 on?
New things, probably.
Well,
Yeah,
my
sure.
question
I mean,
is this, if we were to reduce your
if we-
budget,
yeah.
centralize, consolidate supplies, building maintenance to,
The budget is so small.
well, I'm just saying, I mean, you want to get creative, I'm getting creative.
I know.
And I'm just curious,
Too, I mean, you said our budget is small. It's very small.
Right. and we-
I'm
Well-
concerned that over time, like, what we're asking for is not a large ask.
Right, and I think the other piece that's missing is, we use the books line as the balancer. Right, that's the traditionally the
nothing
one
that I
that
can
we
do about
adjust,
that books
so that we meet the
No.
state standard.
Could I use the 11.4? Sure, because, for
Right.
example, we could invest in electronic materials, electronic books, for example.
the
It's
reason I
not
asked the
something that we've really
question,
done, but we could certainly do that.
making the case
Mhm.
to, the 11.4 is needed because we don't have this type of material we could use. I don't care if the state mandates it or not. If you have if there's a need, you know what I mean? I want to make a more compelling argument to support this. I don't think comparatives to other towns, I'm less concerned with how we rank to other towns. I'm more concerned with saying 2 full-time employees with a proper backup coverage makes more sense to me than 2.8 FTEs. I think unmet needs, to your earlier question, right? If you've got backlogs of kids that aren't getting into programs they wanted to get into,
See, to me, that's a huge thing. If
play
you
that,
have-
let's see those
You have
numbers.
these,
right?
you have these waiting lists of these children, right, that, of taxpayers that want to come, yes, that want to be part of this. And we want to find a way to give them that service.
Let's
I
paint
think
that
that's,
picture.
that's exactly, that's compelling.
I mean, I'd like to know if they're willing to consider using that state aid money. I
Well,
mean,
I
to
think
go
that that's
back.
something we could take up when we talk.
Yeah, right. I mean, that is a big,
Trustees meeting.
Right. I mean, I understand your concern about it. I understand why you wouldn't want to. It's kind of like the same thing with the, using E&D or using anything else, right? We're in a weird window of time in which, you know, the market is strange for all of this, right? And so.
That's understood, but so let's just take, for example, it's 24,000 that needs to be to get to this particular staffing profile. We could do that for, what, 3 years. But I mean, what are the guarantees that after that time, there would be the ability for the town to fund that? Because there's no state aid left at that.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess the question is, much like any other position in the town, if in 3 years you can't afford a position, we can't afford a position, doesn't matter really where the funding source is.
I think the more
right?
likely scenario, I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
is that you're gradually transitioning. It's a bridge. So we can't, if we can't take a $24,000, and I'm not saying we can or we can't do the 100% now. Can we do 25% now?
Make up a plan.
25% more next year and see that transition.
Spread
it out.
That's
It also
saying 50,
proves,
50, you know?
right, it allows time for you, for the library to prove the value to the town, of which it then starts to build more desire.
Live without it, once
Right.
it's in, you know?
Yeah, the other thing is I met with the assessor to basically look at where we come in conservatively for new growth. And, you know, historically, we've been conservative over the amount that you're requesting. So we may be in better shape in the fall. And I know that's kind of how it goes. She was not willing to move that number up in the spring, just to be conservative, but, you know,
We tried the fall thing before.
Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying.
Well, yes, you might,
We're having
sometimes
a
you might have. to,
conversation.
but-
We haven't forgotten. See, that's the key.
Yeah, right.
No,
My point is.
we have forgotten over the years. Like,
Talking about since the fall.
but I agree that
My point is that's where you can absorb some of it as you're moving forward, because that number is going to come up higher than we think it is in our current budget. And then we have some flexibility.
Yeah, it does. It grows every year. I mean, it's 2.5 plus new growth, right? So we get $660,000 or 680 or 690 every year. That's what we get, right? And then we split it. And like I said, we only have, I mean, our budget is, you know, $12 million. We only have $143,000 worth of requests. That's insane, right? That's incredibly conservative for town departments to come back with that, right? We have tons of drivers, contractual drivers, but
Yep.
I mean, we're at the point where the town doesn't fund requests unless we get creative. And so I'm willing to consider any combination if you guys are also willing to go back and think about considering something. There are no guarantees, but you got a way better shot of getting it at least for a couple of years this way than not at all.
I mean,
So-
the one thing I take away to your point is we're having the conversation about getting it done.
Right.
We're looking at ways to get it done. I don't know if that's an experience you've had. We talked about it in the fall, probably in the spring, continuing it. So we're looking for ways to see if there are ways we can get it done. So I'm not sure if that's the experience you've had in the past. But when you think about, I don't know, but you seem very adamant that looking for guarantees. So if this is the same.
No,
project
I
you've
wouldn't
been
say it's
through-
guarantees. I know that it's a slippery slope in using state aid for.
Well, I think that's the same
For
in general.
a staffing pattern that.
We
the
don't
town
want to
could
use
be-
one-time funds for operational needs as a general policy. Been that way since 15 years. But I think we just saw the school use one-time funds for operational needs because the budget required it. And I think there was a cautious approach there as well but there was a need. They saw the need. So,
And I would also say, I would be careful about thinking about what the town should fund, because we have an $800 million road deficit that we don't fund every year too. And if you really had to put us to brass tacks about what we're supposed to be funding, again, it's not as if we're not always supporting the library, but priorities dictate certain things, right? And so I don't think there's ever been anybody on this board since I've been here in 9 years who did not want to fund this position, right? And I think anyone who's been here long enough, FinCom or otherwise, are all equally frustrated. No one wants to see this not get funded this year. So that's what we're trying to do. So if you can find a way, yeah.
take the first step, look at it the other way. You actually have us and the
Right.
town on the hook.
Right.
if we approve the budget and we're talking about it this way, we are sort of in, if you would, if at all possible, it becomes
We're
a
stuck
higher
with it.
priority to complete that transition. That's, that's how I would feel.
To your point, too, once the person comes on board and then there's a benefit cost or something there, then it justifies itself eventually. But until that person is hired into the role and we know what the job actually is gonna be, and what the cost of the actual job is, which I think is gonna be a little bit more than what you're asking for, based on what I'm hearing and I think you need, then you're all set. You'll be set, right? So.
That's not a guarantee.
No, sorry. I just don't want to say no again.
Or we could override it.
Can you just go back to the beginning? So like, in terms of, so are you suggesting that, how much gets funded through their state aid and how much through?
So just conceptually, right, because I was just trying to figure any of it out this week because I can't go through this another year, right? The cost for the position are like 25 grand, right? That's not to increase to the position. The problem is when that increases over 19, it triggers a thing that we're supposed to responsibly budget for, which is benefits, because the employee does have the right to those benefits. We're budgeting those. They're already in the budget. I've already pulled them. They're in there, right? So whether or not it's the existing employee or some other employee where I have an obligation to do that, and so they're there, right? So the impact of the cost in its entirety is $45,000, which is not a lot of money annually to us, right? But in every year, it's just a little bit too much. It's not what we have, right? It's a commitment. So there is the state aid account, right? And this came up because of the question we were having about the earmarks. That's where I was like, that's how I got here. And I was like, and then we asked the question today, can it be used for anything? And then that's like, whoa, wait a second, right? So if you really only need.
Nothing that I'm telling you that you couldn't find out because.
No,
It's
that's
all
what
online.
I'm just saying, it just, like,
I'm
I'm saying,
laying that
it's
out
just, I mean, we're also, right, everybody, like, it's public information, right?
Sure,
Right, so
absolutely.
like, so I first I was thinking of it for the equipment or whatever it is you needed to get, right? Based on your strategic plan, right?
Right.
And in relation to what I was putting in for earmarks. And then I thought, well, why not for this other thing, right? And so if you need $25,000 to get this thing funded in reality this year, because you really don't need benefits, that seems like an easy fix for this year, right? So the question really becomes, right? How many years, right? 2 years? You don't want to have an employee I wouldn't want them to take a job for a year. So that's why I'm saying it's a minimum of 2. So then you like basically committing that you would use $50,000 of that money over the next 2 years to pay for the hours that you need to get the part-time people that you need, plus what you need for the children's librarian. The benefits piece, I'm saying we can figure out. That'll shift anyway once we know numbers, like that corrects itself. But like getting the person hired and into the job, that's the most important part. On the regular budget schedule, not in the fall. So if you guys could consider a proposal that uses some amount of state aid over a certain amount of time, then maybe these guys will agree to it in concept. They're here for 3 years, many of them, right? Then you've got them too.
So I mean, if you get, but I think to Elena's point, like.
Mike's
what-
makes
what
more
is-
push.
what-
See ya.
What is that amount? You know, like if you're talking 2 years.
It's 25 grand, right? Figure the hours, the cost of the hours, and then maybe we get lucky and we find some savings or not towards the end of this, and it's not as much, but like getting your buy-in, right, in partnerships helps get it in the budget. And it doesn't have to be forever, right? There's no guarantee. I'm not saying we're gonna have to always pay for it from state aid. I'm
I
saying-
would push to accelerate the transition. So
Yeah.
If by chance, I'm not saying we're going to be sitting here in the fall, but if we have excess levy capacity, this would be one of the things we'd want to.
100%.
That's yes, that's exactly what I was
That's what I'm
getting
saying.
at.
This is just from getting from budget pass in May to July 1 to fall, when it corrects itself, which is why we're always saying come back in the fall and we'll know, but you don't add positions in the fall if you can help it, right? It's a whole, so.
I think the split as you're thinking about it is you're spitballing it now, but over the next weeks, you'd figure out what the right split could be.
I'm just saying the hours cost X. Let's say it's 24 grand, 25 grand. That's the number. Pay for 2 years of that and come back, right? And then
So are we talking only about the one
So
position as
It's
opposed
both.
to?
So he needs 11
Right.
hours at 14 grand and he needs 9 hours at 8,600, basically.
Right.
So and he's already using this funding, right, to supplement those hours anyway. So he could do that, right? You,
Oh,
any
in
combination-
terms of like the Mondays?
Yeah,
Oh,
but you
yeah.
could use, right, you could do any combination of using this funding to get that. It's basically just finding a creative way so you can also get this other thing.
Oh, yeah, and it's not something I haven't heard of. Like, I do know, for example, that there are libraries that they wanted to fund a Saturday.
Yeah.
They wanted to fund a longer Saturday, so they decided to use state aid toward that. I don't know how much that, equates to, but
Right.
but it has been done.
Yeah.
I don't know about for, positions in that way in that large an amount, but I do know that it's been done
So, I
to
mean,
a certain extent.
It's too bad that Amy just left, but she would be a perfect person to talk to about this because for years she had half a grant or $8,000 paid every year of her outreach worker, right? And the town funded the other half of that, which eventually became a full-time position, right? Because the need created by the job actually existing grew because the service was there. So now I can't imagine a scenario like that we'd ever cut that ever again from the budget. So that's how.
There are no guarantees.
Yes, sorry. I'm just here, but I'm just saying, you gotta be creative around here to actually get these things, and I don't want you to miss it again, right? So if any of these departments were sitting on any kind of money right now to fund their requests, I would be saying the same thing, right? Potentially, for the ones who want to add positions, right? Like the fire,
I don't know offhand. I don't.
who else has them?
Necessarily.
There's only
Attention to
one other position in this budget, and it's for fire, and that's funded with a grant, so the 63, so like, there's nothing else in here that, there's $5 grand for parks, there's money for reclassifications, but that's gonna get cut more than likely. There's 10 grand for building maintenance, and there's like more money for hearings. There's nothing else in here that's a request. I put the rest of your library increases as drivers, the 22 grand, so. This is,
I mean, we certainly at the next trustees meeting can discuss,
but quickly,
well.
You need,
how quickly
yeah,
is quicker? I mean, I guess that's my next.
in the
question.
next 2 weeks.
like, yeah.
Well, our next, when is?
Can you schedule another
You
one
sch-
in
you
between?
need to schedule a meeting.
It's 2 weeks.
meeting,
Schedule another one.
We'll have to
I'll schedule another one. Yeah. And I can meet with you. I can put it together. Whatever you need. Just, I will help you get there. This, yeah.
Can I just-
Assuming these guys want to fund this.
There's a body though that I'd be curious to hear from in terms of FinCom. When you're hearing all these different ways of funding positions, do you have any thoughts on? Because ultimately you would have to obviously weigh in on the decision and the method and.
Yeah. Personally, I agree with the not using one-time funds to operational, right? All of these good basic financial practices.
Right.
I do completely agree with the fact that if you really want this, we do need to get creative. There is no new money coming in. I do believe in the sort of black hole effect of, okay, let's suck the momentum towards not being able to live without the position once it's been added and value is there. Yes, there is a risk that once the state aid portion of it goes away, that it won't be funded anymore. There's always that risk. But it's probably better than nothing, and it tries to get towards the.
But that risk is there for what she's doing right now.
Everything, right, yeah.
Totally, not, right? We've seen it before. We've been in this is nowhere near as bad as the first time we went through the downturn in the economy. We were cutting everything.
Right. They know they're still living with that.
Yeah.
Right.
And with the whole presentation on 2011. yeah.
I'm aware of that.
Is that I think it was your first year, right?
No, I actually came in about 2 years after the slice.
Oh, that's right.
But I was aware of it.
Yeah.
Value proposition is always important, right? People don't mind paying for things they see value for.
Right.
So prove the value and people are willing to pay, right? I'm in the consumer electronics industry. I know more about value proposition than I ever possibly could ever want to know. And the amount of conversations I have talking specifically about customer value proposition.
Mhm.
This is one way to do that. Build the value proposition for the town, so that by cutting it, it becomes a sore spot for the town.
Right.
I don't think you'll have any trouble proving value.
2 weeks.
I think it's needed.
2 weeks.
There was something else I was gonna ask or talk about.
Preferably next week. but-
So the,
Seriously, because
Yeah.
we have to
If you could do
put
it quickly, if you could do it, if you could have a meeting quickly,
okay, so,
we are going to meet next week.
okay, so in any event, my understanding is that there is not money for this, and the money has to come entirely from state aid, correct?
So right now, we need to find $200,000, we're negative $200,000.
That's what I thought, because my understanding was that what was a surplus is now no longer a surplus.
No, I mean, it's, thank God it's come down from a negative of 500,000 and we're at negative 200,000. So we're at negative 200. There are still some outstanding things that we're gonna have to go over. I mean, but there's very few. We're getting down to the end now where we're talking about cutting reserves, right, to fund things. That's the point we're at. So I think this is an addition. It's gotta be creative, right? Because the school has also cut a significant amount from their budget this year, right? And so I certainly think that we'd all really like to go to the floor saying that we used creative funding sources, right? Alternative funding sources for positions that we added, right? One is a fire grant and one is state aid for the library. And then that's easier for everyone to live with.
And just so that I'm clear on this involves exactly the plan we're talking about.
Whatever.
That is to say, an individual who's currently, that is to say, an individual who's currently part-time would become full-time.
Yeah, well, without, yes.
It would be creating a full-time
Full-time
position,
position.
Right.
which could be filled by the
No, yeah,
candidate,
and then
right?
Essentially, it'd be from existing staff, we would have additional hours. We're not looking to hire another part-time staff. I am looking for an on-call person, but I'm not looking for an additional
But it would be, I
staff
think,
person.
right, creating a new position is that would
That
be
might be-
full-time. That could be,
You're basically forcing me to ask the question that I didn't want to ask out loud before, which is, if we're creating a full-time position, do we still need all these assistants? Which I don't think you want me to ask, right?
Too late.
No, you've asked it. And
Yeah.
honestly, know we need that staff.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, so
Yeah.
then your answer is, you need 11 hours to go to, what is that?
30.
30. So it's full. Now I hear what your actual argument is. Am I gonna make you go to 40 for the value add?
I don't know.
I'm gonna think about it.
Okay. No, I'm just,
I mean,
I just.
we've been over this before, right? I've never, with existing positions, with employees that we value, I never want to force anything, right?
Right.
And so through attrition, we make changes.
Mhm.
I don't want to force someone into a decision they don't want to make, which is why I've repeatedly gone back and said, this is a lot of hours. 25 is never going to cut it, right? 30 maybe, 32 maybe, right? 40. So yeah, 30 probably, but let's see it, right? And then what you do with the extra money for the 86 for the assistants, that's you. I don't care
So-
how you schedule that.
You shouldn't have brought that up because now I'm sitting here going, I want to see it, something a little more specific on what the hours look like with the
That's the whole
staffing.
schedule, right?
Not the schedule. I want to understand FTEs, staffing, things like that. Why did 2 desks have to be always manned at the same time? Couldn't you shut one down and have everybody?
We're already doing that.
No, so you can. So your argument that you have to have 2 staffs open all the time.
Occasionally, if I have somebody call out sick and I do not have
I-
somebody to come in,
Look,
I have to put a
These
sign
are
to
the
the
type
desk.
of questions you could very well be asked on the floor. I mean, it seems very, so the idea, what I think I just picked up is if the full FTE is a 30-hour role, but it's full-time with benefits, then if it were 40 hours, would we not need to increase the hours for the part-times? That's where you're going.
Yeah, except in reality, the actual situation is, even though we can't guarantee it, is that the person doesn't actually need the benefits. And so then it's not really part of the proposition, but we can't guarantee that from this side of the budget, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure about what the person is, the role.
Well, that's what I'm
That's what
saying,
I'm
which
going to
is,
talk about a role.
if we were really trying to get down to the actual cost, it's different than what's on here, right? This is a conceptual cost based
Okay.
upon, right?
We got to firm that up then.
Well, we can firm it up, but
Hence
like
them having
in
a meeting.
executive session, because we can't talk about
Right.
that. about jobs that don't exist for employees that currently exist, that don't exist and can't guarantee jobs to people. So it's a whole thing, right?
Right.
But
Right.
I do think that 30 hours is probably fine, right? 25 seemed, 30 is probably fine.
We looked at 25
I
before
know
and
you did.
decided that
I know,
Didn't work.
I know. We looked at every combination
All
of
right.
this. That's why I'm tired of looking at it.
So why, so again, all right, we,
my whole idea was just to exhaust everybody.
Yeah, you did it.
So that at certain.
You did it. It was one of the things on my list that I got to cross off.
No, I mean, we talked about this multiple times, obviously, over the years, so
We're good.
Right.
let's not, we're kind of at the finish line right now, so
Right.
let's try to just get it across there, and if there's some crazy data we need, we can ask for it, but
Okay.
let's
Yeah.
not bog it down again, and we're sitting
Right.
here in the fall going,
Right.
well, it's not a good time to do it.
Well, let's see if the board will say agree to using some percentage of funds from state aid to help support this. And then I can bring that back next week, preferably.
Well, we just have to.
You guys are in a meeting right now, aren't you?
Yeah.
No, just go downstairs.
Do you have,
You got them not posted.
Yeah, we're not supposed to.
Expect all of us to be here.
I didn't expect.
So. Doesn't matter. You can make any decisions.
Right. So one thing we can agree to is to schedule a meeting
Yeah.
for this next coming week.
Great.
Thank you.
And you can, in concept, tell me the number, and that's all I really need to know. Right, you don't, whether they've officially agreed to it or not. Once you do the math and you have a number you're gonna bring to them and you're gonna debate it, let's say it's 25, I'm gonna start using 25, right? Just.
Thank you all.
So I'll say
Okay,
that.
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
We're going to talk about highway later.
To talk about highway right now, right now, yes,
Okay,
this one has to be talked about.
okay,
I like the ones where.
Let's do it.
We just sign under your name on all these things?
Do I sign under here where it's just
that the
got
last
a
one?
bunch of spaces? Okay.
Oh, great.
Don't worry, I got
This
this.
is the one that needs to be blue.
It's fine, it's gonna be quick. I just
Something
have one.
needed to be in blue. Oh, maybe it was the,
Is this in there too?
I think it was the one for the.
The state needed to be blue. It's for the record. show.
Yeah, then
Finally.
there should be.
Plus, I need to talk about the
Yes,
winter.
I'm sure.
Interfering, but I want to.
Sorry, Lonnie. I
Sorry, we gotta keep moving right now.
Yeah, let's
We
talk
have
about
got to keep,
Sorry, Lonnie, there's a.
cannot do that right now.
Sorry?
I scribbled on your line because I started to sign.
You can finish signing.
Okay, the highway budget. All right, let's talk about it for a second. Because there is something very important in here, two important things we need to talk about.
Sure. Sharing the screen.
So it's changing over into a different budget next year. It's called something else. Don't worry about that. But what's in this budget right now, right? So there used to be three sections of the budget: road machinery, highway construction maintenance, and snow and ice. Snow and ice, we just went over ad nauseum. I can't even think about that right at this moment.
Right.
That's totally not okay. For this particular budget, or highway construction and maintenance, there's only two changes in here, okay? But there's one that I need to recommend to you, so that you can just follow along. So the highway salaries are down, because we've had turnover in the positions, okay? So we've had, guys that were there for a long time, got new people coming in, that's all that is right there. They still get the same percentage increases as everybody else, but there's turnover.
We're
not down FTEs, it's just a new salary roll up. Okay.
I have taken $90,000, as you can see, and put it in the line for the highway surveyor, right? We are gonna have to hire somebody. I don't think this is gonna be enough based upon the numbers that I've been seeing. Which is why I had put 45 in addition in the that's on the other page about negotiations, right? I think this number is gonna actually come in around 100 at least, maybe change, just throwing that out there so that you know. We did tentatively agree, right, to pay for CDLs if we need to. That's in here. You'll see that 10 grand there. That's enough for two, right? We need to negotiate that into their contracts and change their job descriptions to say that they're no longer required to have them or have them by a certain time, because it does not say that. So we need to do that. This line right here, this is what is a big issue earlier, a couple of weeks ago. See this 56.5?
Yep.
That's here. 2 budget years ago, I added this line. It was approved in the budget to be a capital reoccurring line for equipment, right? There's a little note over here. It was based on $1.05 million in equipment over 10 years, and that was supposed to be sort of the reoccurring payment for it. The first year that it get budgeted, Alan didn't even know that it was there. So he didn't spend it, nothing happened to it, right? This past year, this fiscal year, as you've seen, because I lost my mind at the beginning of the year, they charged the payment for the track list to this line. Now, in concept, it's okay. But the problem is the track list was supposed to be paid for through some other means. We have an article.
And not until next year. We didn't
Well,
expect it. until-
we expected it this year. We just expected to do a transfer to make the payment from CapEx or from stabilization, right? And that article is on the warrant. What I am telling you is, realistically, we're gonna hire somebody this year and they're gonna get here, what, maybe in the fall? Are they gonna be buying $56,000 worth of equipment this next year while they're here? No. So I'm saying to you, as long as your article passes and we don't need this money as a backup for the track list, we can cut this, right? We've never used it for anything. We don't even need it as a placeholder for the 6 months. And if we did, we could save some free cash and spend it at the end of the year in May, right? This is one that you can totally punt on and take, right? But I will just say again, this is the sort of account we're supposed to be putting in budgets, right? Everybody who's got equipment should have some sort of account like this. So that's the only thing I wanted to point out to you, is that that is sitting there. That's what was the original intent, was for, that's why I was so surprised when he said he's already out of money for the things that he bought. And I said, how is that possible? You have
But I thought.
50 grand in there.
That's true, but this track list, when we talked about it, because of the lead time to get it, it's supposed to show up in the fall for next year, isn't it?
It's supposed to show up this year, and it needed a funding source for this year. And I just would remind you that you only have $200,000 in CapEx.
Yeah,
You
but
can
it
only
wasn't-
make 3 payments, basically.
They didn't expect
You
it
need
until.
5 more after that.
Right.
You've made,
Right.
well, you'll
Right.
need 4 more. So it's not, you're probably gonna have to take it from stabilization at town meeting, but probably not CapEx, right? Or transfer or whatever. When we should have, I mean, this, I shouldn't, who knows? Let's just say we have $900,000 in free cash in the fall. We'll have about 300 more than we normally would have because it's delayed. You can replenish those accounts then, right? You could even potentially, since we've already made this payment, recommend it, pushing that off to the fall and doing the article then, but you might as well allocate the money now. But this is somewhere that you can go to start making cuts. That's really all I want to say about highway.
So are you using that to close the $200,000 gap in your mind right now?
So I'm so glad you asked.
Because you didn't want to talk about salt.
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't make any sense to me still, but, so we have a gap, I only have one thing really outstanding still that I can't answer a question on because I'm still working on it, which is streetlights, okay? It's complicated, it's gonna be expensive. I wrote down Andrew's number, 10.6 for, it's gonna be a lot, so I'm gonna take something, I don't know that it's gonna be $48,000, but I'm gonna take something for that, and that's included in this number already, right? So we're at 200,000. That number is also going to change a little bit, potentially based upon some revenue changes. So let's say it goes to 240, right? So you're going to have to decide if you're going to take all of the 240, or you're going to ask the school to go and find 100 or 50, right? And decide. I've made a list on the page that says drivers, as I do. You scroll down, it's been hidden. You can see it now. Okay. It's no secret. It's just there. So the top 6 things are the department requests for the $143,000. And then down here below is this little list of other things that I always say I could probably find about 150, 200,000. These are the things that I'm talking about, which is this 45 in FinCom reserve. Some years we've had 20, right? Health insurance reserve, we're funding it $80,000, well, 82,000, which is 100%. We typically run around 65%, 60%. We could take a little from there if we had to, right? This retiree insurance thing, very intrigued by what Jay was saying about their $600,000 swing. Very interested in that, but you know, this is more of a political.
We've been talking about that for a long time.
Right, but it would save $60,000 a year and probably only really net 30,000 in this next year if we made a change like that. So these are the areas we would go. After this, it's cutting things for real, like. So this is your list. You can start thinking about it as you will, like, or if you want to have a conversation, follow up with the schools, or if there's something else you want to do, let me know, right?
Drivers, request drivers.
Anything else on this? So next week when I come back, I would try to come back with as close to a balanced budget as I can possibly come back with, which is what I would do. So if you have any inclinations or in any direction on any of the things I just said, like, yes, sounds good. No, I don't think so. That would be helpful. And I put a little note, you could see for like this reserve for negotiations, that doesn't cut the entire thing. It just punts it to STM. Okay?
That makes sense.
Right.
Right.
So the building maintenance, you could also potentially punt to STM. So now you're at 55, right? But you're eventually going to increase that. Hearings, you got to fairly fund those. Recreation, sure. I mean, we can talk about the fire deputy too, if you want. I don't really want to, but I will. Every month that we don't fund the position, it would save about $2,000. So, because there are still overtime costs for not funding the position, right? So this budget would it's either going to be 30,000, 60. It's either going to be 122,000 offset by a grant of 63,000, or it's going to be an increase of 25,000 for overtime. So there's still going to be an impact.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you wanted to say, I'm certainly not recommending this, let's not hire them for July, but let's hire them for September, then I can calculate how each month for each thing. It's the same thing you could say about the library position, which is we can't fund the whole year, but what if we funded half a year? Right? What if we started in January? I'm just giving you options of things.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right.
Started later.
That's the sort of things that we can start tinkering with to save 15, 20 grand here or there, right? Like, yeah. Or we could increase revenues. Throwing that out there.
You actually made a comment that revenues is changing when you looked at the difference might jump up to 240, I think.
Yes.
What was the change in revenues that you're forecasting?
I would like to wait until next week to talk about that.
You shouldn't even have mentioned that because now I'm thinking.
You already know what it is. You already know what it is.
I'd love to know what it is.
Well, I'll tell you all maybe next week. Next week, you'll know for sure. How about that? But I'm anticipating that some anticipated revenue that we would have been getting based upon some agreement that we won't be getting half of. That's all. And so it's not to talk about today.
I don't mind waiting,
You'll know next
especially
week.
if it's good news.
You might know as soon as tomorrow. It's not good news.
No, it's the other direction.
Keep it for,
Don't tell me.
keep that for a few more weeks. You don't need to bring that down.
Right, so that's, think about it. I don't know if you want to split that 240, 120 us, 120 them, and go back and ask if they've got any room at MRSA. I'm
My brain hurts.
sure they could find $50,000 or just take it an extra 100 from E&D. Give us a break.
Yeah.
That's a conversation that can happen.
Why wouldn't we, if you're looking for them to take their one-time funds, why wouldn't we take our one-time funds?
Fine, deal.
No, I'm just saying, before we start tell somebody else, like, go use your rainy
No,
day.
I
fund,
agree
you know?
with you, but like, what's the difference at that one point? If it's $1 million or $1,050,000, right? Like, they'll still have another 1.6 in there and then another, whatever the other one was, 1.7 in there.
Percentage of their one-time fund is
Right.
much less than ours. Right.
They have more in their stabilization than the town does. I mean, that's
By a lot.
right.
Yes.
By a large margin.
And to think, and you know, the thing is, he said
Double.
it's like the town's free cash. It's not like the town's free cash, it's like the town's stabilization. That's what it is. And that E&D money, they're allowed, the whole idea is they're allowed to keep 5%
Right.
of their budget.
Which is
So in
a
other
whole
words,
budget.
they're allowed, you know, for us, we have to have a balanced budget. For them, it isn't for us, it's, you know, what can we afford to put in there? No, they're built from the very beginning that they're going to take 5% of whatever their total budget is, not just the piece that Mendon gives them, but the total budget of everything from federal, state, all funds, take 5% and put it aside every year. And they keep it at that. And they act like they're doing a favor.
They can't take 5% every year. They'd exceed- they get-
No, but they get 5% of the budget.
They maintain 5%.
Right.
down the library.
That's right.
It's not 5% compound.
Year over year. No, but it's 5, yeah, but some years, yeah, but if they don't use it all, they can take 5% of the current year and it is compounded.
We'll agree to disagree on that, but I hear you.
Okay, so that's all of that for next week, right? That's
Alright.
for next week,
Next
for the
time.
budget, but we're,
Right.
All right, so we're gonna punt everything here except this executive session.
well, I also want to talk about the town hall for a minute. I don't want to we need to talk about that. I need direction from the board. I do not feel comfortable moving forward with side conversations about direction. So
What do you, there is no, we talked about it last week. There is no, it's not on the agenda. I didn't put it on the agenda because there's nothing to discuss. There has been there was a plan going back to 2015. There is an idea that the downstairs is being constructed. We went out for a bid. We went out for bids. We have somebody, we have a contractor, we have a craftsman who's down there.
I just want to make sure that everyone is nodding in agreement because.
Yes, and let me continue this. There is nothing on that floor except that tin ceiling that has anything to do with historic. All right, I've been coming in this building since 1969. All right, and there is nothing down there that is the same now as then, and nothing then was historic except the outside of the building. There was a conversation about exposing a wall to show everybody a fireplace. That's great. If you're going to expose that, that's great. We have floors that are, you know, wooden floors that can be restored. We have a tin ceiling that's being restored. But as far as whether we put up a glass wall or put up another, make it like a cavern like it was before with a hallway, that's not historic. That's preference. And you went up to the town hall in Upton and they have a glass wall. I'm all in favor of having a conference room, and the idea of having a glass there so you can actually see it and opening it up, I think is very positive. And we talked about that last week, and I don't know if anybody else has any, but of course, now what we're doing is we're talking about it again.
Well, you can just say that you're just repeating what you said at another meeting. I just want to be clear because
I don't know how I could be any clearer. Does anybody else disagree with
Just
that?
know the Historic Commission has requested to get on the agenda to talk about this. I'm not sure if we've accommodated that request yet.
Who have they requested to be on the agenda? Who did they ask?
You received an email
Right?
asking to talk about the town hall
We did that last week.
in.
We did that 2
And I-
weeks
and
ago.
I think there was subsequent discussions about aesthetics, not necessarily historic, but can you make the aesthetics look more historical? So personally, I'm okay with the design, but can I tell you what the design, all the aspects of the design are? No. But I mean, I would say this, it's probably going to move forward because I have a feeling the board probably is going to go in that way. What I'm suggesting is invite them to a session so they can at least voice, ask their questions, make their suggestions, and, you know, it's still not clear to me from a design standpoint, who's making decisions. And I don't mean that, I don't mean that to be a negative. I'm just saying, there's not a building committee. There are people not here expressing opinions. I want them to express them here so they can be heard. That's.
And so I just want to make sure, because I heard this week, and I want to say it out loud, because this board wasn't of 5 then, when this came up 3 years ago. We were approached by certain members of that committee to make an additional subcommittee specifically related to things on the town hall campus. And the board said no.
Okay.
And so that's why it doesn't exist, right? Because that wasn't something that the board felt they needed at the time, right? So I don't know if the intent is to have the board take another vote on creating another committee related to this, but I am 2 months from being completed downstairs, and I don't want to push Danny off again. And I just want to say, it's not on the agenda. It is very difficult for the contractor who has done incredible work on this building to continue to hear criticism about the work that he is doing when he's gone above and beyond in reproducing, recreating, taking home and doing extra woodwork to make this place look amazing.
I think this board is the decision maker.
Yes.
Okay. I think we have a response, and I'm saying if trains left the station, I might suggest some of the things I've heard is, you know what? If you think there are pieces that might make the inside of the, look more historic, God bless you. Specifically, I've said specifically, what are you suggesting as opposed to just open-ended, the color doesn't seem right. I'm like, well, what color does seem right?
Right.
I don't know.
I
I'm
asked the
colorblind.
same exact question.
But my point is, I don't think it behooves anyone not to give them a chance to express themselves. This board is the decision makers. We can make decisions. We'll go ahead. I'd rather complete, because I don't think anything that's planning to be done, as far as I can tell, is going to impact future changes that might make things more aesthetically pleasing to the broader community if they so choose, right?
Right.
I do think it would make sense for this board to give them the opportunity to join us. And if not, if they don't take that opportunity, that's on them, right?
Right.
But I wouldn't slow down.
Okay, well,
Well, I don't know how I don't know how you don't slow down, because he's trying to do this downstairs.
No, you mean keep going forward, don't stop.
Right, right.
Yeah, I mean, if we're 2 months out, this discussion should be had. I mean, you sort of late to the ball game to be bringing it up now if you're 2 months out.
And the opportunity had been there repeatedly over a period of time
Right.
for them
And
to.
so I, like, from my standpoint, I certainly feel like we have done and been accommodating at every point in this and continue to be. I am not going to be passive aggressive about the way in which we are making decisions. I'm going to state the facts in which we're doing them. I asked for input. I asked for exactly what you just said. What exactly are you talking about, right? Give me an example. And then the example is something in a picture that looks exactly like what we're doing. And then the response is, well, you just don't understand. It doesn't feel right in here.
So I'd like to have the discussion here and have it.
But at this point, this will be easily, I don't know, the 5th time we have reiterated.
We've been through
same-
this, we've been through this over the last few years, multiple times.
Right. And so they're welcome to come in anytime, but I don't appreciate the continued sort of way in which it's sort of relayed that they haven't been involved, or they're not aware, or they're not part, or they should have been a committee a year ago. Well, that's great, and that's an opinion, right? And the other part is, this is not a museum. This is a working office building, right? And I certainly think that Danny has done everything to restore things beautifully to the best that he could. And to Mike's point, there's not much historic left on that main floor, right? So, and I think Danny's done a great job. And I just feel terrible when I see him get caught in the crossfire of this and feel like he's walking on eggshells in the building, and every decision that he makes is going to be second guessed or criticized, or it's not good enough, or, he has everything he does. And I just feel terrible that we put him through it. And so I'm going to tell him to finish, and I'm going to thank him very much. And I'm sure it's going to be beautiful. And hopefully everybody will remember what it used to look like, right? For the last 30 years, basement, main floor, library next door, outside of this building, outside of that building. I hope everybody remembers what it looked like 8 years ago before I got here, just FYI. So I'm done.
I'm not sure where that's going, honestly. I just think.
You know exactly where it's
Well,
going.
no, I guess
And
my
it needs
point
to be
is-
said directly and out loud. And so I'm not afraid of having difficult conversations.
Time. We're having it without all parties here. I have a problem with having these types of discussions and not having,
I think
it's
that,
one
no,
side or the other. Bring them in.
I think part of the issue,
Be done.
but part of the issue is these discussions have been had multiple times before you were here, after you left last time, before you got here now. And what happens is there is a condition of shopping where when somebody new gets here, then they're the next one in the box.
Or a new board might make a subcommittee instead of the old board.
Right.
I get it.
And since I've been here, Mike, I have not seen details on what exactly, I know conceptually.
Well,
So I just want to say that.
because there
It's a
was,
communication thing.
because there
That's-
was, there was no way to do anything more detailed than what we had, because the discussion was always, well, maybe there's something underneath here. We have to take it apart and see the next step. And we as a board gave them, what's that?
And the glass wall, that was based on, that was not originally thought about the glass wall.
No, that was actually a suggestion by members of the Historical Commission that talked about how wonderful it looked like in Upton. What could we do like them?
Well, and actually, my consideration of it actually came from Jean's feedback, which was that she thought there should be more light in the hallway because it was dark and that there might be a security issue.
And I agree with the light piece 100%.
Maybe people would feel uncomfortable even in an office meeting with no windows.
I have a
So
problem with design. I'm thinking more process, about this and going through and other things. We got to make sure we are and document it. So to your point, if there are meetings and minutes, and you can say, remember this meeting we had? This is what we decided. And I just feel like that level of, unfortunately, that's where we need to be. Maybe in the future, we won't need to be there, but right now,
very happy to have the next phase of this project, which is the alcove space and the elevator and the outdoor doors, be entirely controlled and organized and executed by Historic. And I will just be over here seeing where the funding comes from.
yeah, once again, that's not, I think, what anyone's saying, but I do think that a project of that magnitude should have a level of project management. And I don't think that, that's not fair to you. As a town administrator, I don't think you should be a general contractor. Sounds like you are. Sounds like, for the last 8 years, based on your last
Well,
comment.
do you know what the discussion largely was, that because of the nature of the building and what a hodgepodge it was,
Yeah.
and because of Danny Gardner's previous experience, what he'd worked on for me 30 years ago over at the library over here when he redid the downstairs, the discussion was, well, we need somebody who's a craftsman who understands how to think on the fly, which is how a lot of this has been done. And that's how it was put to him at that point. And everybody gave input as it went along. But again, it's, what are we going to do with this? Well, we're not really sure because we don't have any formal plans and we don't have any money to really to plan it out that way. And we can't really tear it all apart and then figure out what we're going to do because it's a working building, So that's how it's kind of developed the way it is. And to say in the 11th hour, all right, we need to stop everything and retool, and then we have to, it's not going to happen.
And have no recommendations for what it should be changed to.
Right, because the next question is informally, well, what do you want?
I
don't
don't
know.
want to be informal. I want to be formal. When
Yeah, I know,
people can't come to and say specifically what they want, say, you've had your, all right, sorry, but we think this makes sense. And as a board, we can say, we're going in this direction. And that there's no ambiguity. That's the thing that I think that gets me is, right?
There is no ambiguity.
We just recently had these meetings. Mike, you were there. You were downstairs when they came in. Weeks ago, months ago, when they came in, we went through the space and we said, this is what's gonna happen. And now they come back in and say, we don't.
Right.
I don't know.
We're not gonna, like I said,
Right.
so much for it not
Maybe
being on the
we're in
agenda.
Because we're in the.
If
know
you,
because we're
if
here, but-
if somebody sends,
Keep going.
yes, and if somebody sends me an email from, if you want me to put it on this agenda for next week, but we're not gonna stop. We can't stop. We had it shut down for months, right? While we were retooling other things, and now it's beginning again. I can't do that to them. I don't think we need to do that to them. So,
Tony Danny's not gonna survive this.
right,
Just for it.
okay. So we're gonna,
Go and dig that
next
up.
week, number 11, number 12, the 13, and we're gonna go to next week, and then 15 will be next week, probably, but 14, we'll go into executive session now for number 14. So do you want to adjourn your?
Make a motion to close the FinCom.
Yes.
Second.
I'll second it.
All those
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
Closed at 10:28 PM.
thanks, guys.
God, is it really?
Oh.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming, guys.
We're gonna stop the recording, sorry, after you read that.
Yeah. I move enter into executive session under purpose 6 pursuant Mass General Law 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on negotiating position of the public body, and 3 pursuant to,
You're not doing.
no, we're not doing 3. So just to public body.
Second.
You need a roll call vote. Raleigh, aye.
Chanel, I.
Got it, aye.
Brugos, aye.
And that's it.
Well.
Right,
you in the
to
meeting?
go into executive session, right.
Oh. Hold on, I'm gonna stop the recording. Hold on.